Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. It's getting late. I didn't realize the last video was going to go as long as it did, so this one is probably not going to go as long. But I wanted to talk about this because this is, I guess, our sandbox. Justice Democrats. I'm talking about Justice Democrats again. I get emails from Justice Democrats. I get emails from all sorts of things, Republicans, Democrats, all of it, because I just from doing the show itself, I need content, I need news, so I get emails from those sources. Let me read you one of the emails I got today, because I kind of just want to make a point, and it's a point that I've made before, but I want to make it a little bit more sternly now. Justice Democrats. Jamal, the DNC and Democrats are state parties are at it again. They're standing between Justice Democrats candidates and voters by blocking access to the most critical voter contact tools. Their undemocratic efforts mean that we have to spend more on expensive workarounds, plus apply costly legal pressure to force these state parties to do the right thing. Help us make sure we have the money to fight back. Give us $2.70. Now the funny part is, this used to be 27 bucks, and it's slightly manipulative, but I don't hate the manipulativeness of it, just because my position on that is somewhat changed in regards to manipulativeness of politics. I think you need spectacle. I think spectacle needs to be a part of it. I don't like the manipulativeness of it, just from a guttural level, but I understand why they're doing it. 27 bucks was the thing that Bernie Sanders used to talk about. People donate 27 bucks. People donate 27 bucks. And they're trying to make this thing that we as Justice Democrats are an extension of what Bernie Sanders was. So we're going to go with this idea of 27 bucks. Somewhere along the way, apparently, they weren't getting the 27 bucks and they dropped it to $2.70. It's like they've discounted their rate. That's awesome. These are the same tactics the DNC used in 2016 when they took away Bernie's access to the voter file. The establishment wants our progressive movement to fail. They know we're going to win if we can reach voters with our message, so they're trying to stop us from knocking on doors and making phone calls. Well, they could try, but they won't succeed. Here's our plan. If grassroots Justice Democratic contributors can chip in enough money, we will buy third-party software and data for all candidates in these states. Then we'll look at how we can apply legal pressure to make sure these state parties pay for their attempts to stack the deck. That's one email. Another email. Jamal, again, DNC's chair Tom Perez's just purged high-ranking Bernie and Keith Ellison supporters from key party positions. Guess who they swapped in? Major Clinton supporters. The DNC just doesn't get it. Even after losing more than 1,000 seats nationwide and Trump winning the White House, the DNC is doubling down on failed strategies. That's why the establishment crew is purging Progressive Party reformers. Team Perez wants a Republican-light party, and they won't stop at anything to shut progressives out. They will stop at nothing to stop progressives out. We aren't sitting on the sidelines. Contribute $2.70. There's also another video by Cal Kalinske, in which Cal is talking about them, shutting them out and not allowing them access to the voter rolls and all this other stuff. Let me go to this video. Let me show the video, by the way. Let's see. Okay, that wasn't Cal Kalinske. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's go to Cal. I'm sorry. Look, now I'm having my point in this is, what did you expect? What of the Democratic Party's behavior did you expect them to say, okay, here are the keys. Here are the keys. They lost all throughout the United States, so like 1,000 seats. All throughout the United States. I think it's more than 1,000. I think it's near 1,100. They had a supermajority in the Senate when Obama took office. They lost it completely. House, Senate, Supreme Court. Now, and the presidency, of course, to reality show hosts. After doing all of this, there was no soul searching, and they immediately turned around and said, we are united, even though 15 million people fled the burning fire that was their party. left in droves. But they lied through their teeth to anybody who would listen, saying, we are completely united. We're going to have a unity commission. Why do you need a unity commission if you're united? Shafting Keith Ellison to install Tom Perez, even against their own bylaws. What of this did you believe gave you the impression that they were going to hand over the keys to the car? Let's keep going. Now, in addition to installing Tom Perez in this particular way, what happened when candidates were running? So what I mean is, the Democratic Party never once kind of embraced this thing of, okay, why do we fail so much? Never touched it. Never touched it. Hillary Clinton is running a book tour where she's blaming any and every person who's an Ashite to whoever would listen. Now, not to mention all of these Hillbots out there screaming at the top of their lungs that, how dare you talk about Kamala Harris? How dare you talk about Cory Booker? How dare you talk about these people who are perfectly good people? What in their behavior gave you the impression that they were going to hand over the keys? You believe failure was going to do that. Now, when they had that unity commission, the moment that that unity commission went out of the public light, to whatever degree the public light is in, they started the purges. They started the purges. People aren't paying attention. We can get rid of them. Now, I understand just as Democrats is paying attention. I understand that, some other people who are into politics may be paying attention. But the overwhelming majority of the population has no clue what's taking place. They may have heard the Unity Commission, but now they were in the shadows. The knives come up. The knives come up. What of this gave you the impression that they were going to hand over the keys to you just because they've lost their legitimacy from an electoral standpoint? They cheated Bernie Sanders. Now, people kind of make this point like, dude, why aren't you getting over that? That is not an insignificant thing. You understand that the transition of power in a country is an amazing thing. It's an epic thing, even though people see it as this kind of common thing. You're literally saying we're choosing somebody else to make the larger decisions of our particular country. Now, if anything decapitates or inhibits that process, it means that the public itself did not get to make the choice. That person was installed by some other factor, by some other thing that overrided what the public wanted in that capacity. That is a major, big deal. That is a major, big deal. If the public and the people of that particular country is not choosing who runs that country, you have a fundamental problem. You have a runaway government at that point. What in the behavior of the Democratic Party, be it cheating Sanders, be it installing Perez, be it bringing Donald Brazil back into the Democratic fold in this way, one thing after the next, what of their behavior gave you the impression that they're going to say, here are the keys, have at it. We've lost our legitimacy, here are the keys. They double down. Now, your problem here is you don't have leverage. The issue is leverage. I'm reading these emails because these emails sound as if you're in a separate party. Like, this is the email that a Republican would send about a Democrat, or a Democrat would send about a Republican. But you yourself are calling yourself a Justice Democrat, and yet you're trying to act as if you're something fundamentally different than the party itself. I would agree that the things that you're pushing are fundamentally different, but when brass tacks hits, when rubber meets the road, you fell in line and you voted for Hillary Clinton. All of these things that you're talking about, them shafting your guy, that happened in real time. You turned around and voted for the party that did it anyway. Cry all you want. When it hits, rubber meets the road, you still end up voting for the party that's doing these things. You can have a list of 20 failures that you yourself would ascribe to the party. You would say the party is bought. You would say it's corrupt. You would say a list of their failings. And I would probably agree with you with that list of their failings. But the difference is you turned around and voted for that same party. And when elections come up, the question becomes, are you continuously voting for that same party? If you are, what does it matter if you get on your YouTube video and bitch and moan about it? You're still falling in line. You're still falling in line. The guy who you wanted, put the shit in context. I agree with you that they're doing all this stuff to weed leftists out of the party because they don't necessarily want your type. So no, they're not going to give you the voter files unless they're forced to give you the voter files. They don't like you. They don't want you in their party. They want your vote. They don't want you in their party. There's a difference in those things. Vote for me. But no, we don't want your ideas. We're okay with being who we are. Problem with that is you're continuing to vote for them. You're still doing it. So you have the situation where they smeared your guy, be it Ellison or Sanders. And with Sanders, they broke him. Like, and what I mean when I say broke, I mean, here's your fallen hero. Broken. Saying support the person who broke him. Now, you understood that they cheated. You understood that the process wasn't fair. You understood that the election itself was rigged. You understood all that. You even covered all that. You baked all of that into the cake, and you still turned around and said, vote for the person who did all those things. Where's your power and your leverage? If it doesn't necessarily matter what takes place, you're still willing to vote for that particular party. Where is it? Where is it? Where is your leverage when they know at the end of the day, when rubber meets the road, they still got your vote? You're still a loyal soldier. You're still going to get on your show and tell people vote Democrat. You're still going to sheepdog people into that particular party. Whatever your motivation, whatever your reasoning, whatever you're thinking, what it boils down to brass tacks is you still follow this thing of being a good soldier to get people into the Democratic Party. You may call yourself TYT, you may call yourself progressive. I understand that you're trying to push certain ideas. I baked that into the cake of my analysis with this. I do believe that you're earnest about the ideas that you're trying to push. I'm just going to make this point that whatever you want to say about Democrats, whatever you want to say about them, you can bitch, moan, you can send these emails and everything else. Who do you vote for? Who do you vote for? Who do you tell your people to vote for? They told you to bow down, and you bitched and moaned about it, but at the end of the day, you bowed down. You bended the knee. Now, not just bended the knee, you told your network and everybody else to bend the knee. There was this feuding going on between TYT and Jimmy Dore because Jimmy Dore refused to bend the knee. You guys did. For all of your protests and everything else in this. They don't like you. They don't want you to be a part of their party. They've gotten that across in 1,000 different ways. Regardless of what they say in regards to unity and everything else. When the lights went off, the knives came out. Who are you supporting? Are you going to support Democrat? If your candidates lose in the primaries, are you going to turn around and tell your network that they support the Democratic candidate? And if so, where is your power in this? Where's your power? They're not scared of you, dude. They're not scared of you. Until you put the fear of God in them, nothing changes. No, they're not going to give you their voter things because they don't like you. They don't believe that you have any legitimacy in the sense of being able to take it from them. Your power in this is putting the fear of God in them. They may not necessarily be scared of the candidates you put up. They will be terrified of what the Republicans put up. Meaning your power in this is to use Mothra to get what you want from Godzilla. You start with no. Put your candidates up. Do what you got to do. But when those candidates lose, if those candidates lose, the question becomes, are you going to support the Democrat after your candidate loses? And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what you say. I'm going to show part of Cal's video, but this video is long. Actually, I'm going to just put Cal's video at the bottom because Cal is just making the same point. This thing of, like these guys aren't necessarily letting us in. They're blocking us from the voter things. All of the stuff essentially saying we're trying to do X, Y, Z. We're Justice Democrats. We're trying to push for this progressive agenda. The Democrats don't want it. They're stopping us at every turn. That's his argument. That we are trying to make a difference. We're trying to make a change. They don't want those changes to take place. That's his pitch. That's his pitch. That hasn't changed since when they cheated Sanders. I don't know why you thought it was going to change after they cheated Sanders. It will change if they consistently and continuously lose. The question becomes, what is the breaking point of the party? What is the breaking point? What is the point where the party says, okay, this isn't working, we relent. We need you. What's that point? And until you're willing to go to that point, until you're willing to say, all right, I'm willing to drive this fucking thing off the cliff if we're not going to get things to go our particular way. Until you are there, nothing changes. Until you get to the point where you can fundamentally say no, turn your network around and say, no, we don't agree that you should vote for these Democrats because we're fundamentally different than what they are. If they're not towing our particular line, if they're not going to support what is the philosophical basis of what the party was, then you shouldn't get your vote. We're running our candidates. You should vote for our particular candidates. If our candidates lose, then vote for Greens. That should be the pitch. If you're going to do the Justice Democrats thing at all, that should be your pitch. Yes, we're running candidates in the Democratic Party because we believe that's the best chance that we got. If those candidates fail, if those candidates shafted, if those candidates cheated, don't vote for the milquetoast Democrat that's in that place unless that person is going to represent your interests. Unless you know that person is going to represent your interests. That's not what the network does. That's my biggest gripe with the network, if I'm being honest. Like, that thing of, oh, we're bitching, we're this, we're that, we're this or that, vote Democrat. Vote Democrat. If you want to call somebody sheepdogs, that's the sheepdog factor. That's a sheepdog factor. Nothing changes. It's like all of this whining and crying. Oh, wah, wah. Democrats aren't giving us the keys to the car. Wah. What did you expect? They're incentivized not to do that. What did you expect? I'm sorry. What did you expect? I'm hearing this whining and complaining from Cal. It's like, what did you expect? What did you expect? You have a party apparatus that has based itself around cash. How much money can we get? We need X amount to get into elections. We want to be in power, and we have like-minded people who believe in the same way we do. Markets over people. That's us. That's the Democratic Party. We're slightly less batshit crazy than the Republican Party, but we're still going to do right-wing shit. We're the Democratic Party. We're a conservative party. That's not what the Democratic Party is supposed to be. Fair enough. Now, Cal is saying, hey, you're supposed to be something different, and we're trying to take you over because you fail so much. And what is the response of Democrats? You can go fuck yourself. We don't want your help. Go away. This is a business. This is not about politics. This is a business. We get a large amount of cash to do favors for people. And when you progressives start messing around and try saying things like trying to get people health care and college and getting us out of these wars and everything else, you are hurting our business model. So no, we don't want you to have the voter rolls. Yes, we're going to talk about, progressivism and working and all this other stuff, but we don't mean that shit. You guys actually mean it. That's a problem. We don't want you to be a part of this process. What did Cal think? What did he think? This is politics. You're trying to compel people to do something that those people don't necessarily have to do. The compulsion that those people work on is, who's paying me? Who's paying me? They're incentivized to be that way. They're not incentivized to be any other way. You have pitchforks or you have dollars. In our society, dollars carry the day. People are so busy working, so busy with their head down. They're so into whatever their context is. They don't necessarily pay attention to the wider scale of politics. They don't understand how decisions that these people make in office adversely affect their living situations and the situations of their family. They don't see it. They're busily struggling, trying to survive and trying to make ends meet. Now, the people who watch this stuff and who pay attention to it, fair enough. But that's not the overwhelming majority of the population. Most of the population doesn't see this stuff. Democrats understand that. Meaning, yes, they can purge these people without consequence. They felt like they could pull it off, so they did it. There wasn't anything to stop them from doing it, so they did it. Yes, they're going to not give you the voter files. If there's no consequence for it, they're not going to give it to you. What's their reason? What would be their motivation to do that? They're paid to do otherwise. Their business model is to be and do otherwise. So no, you're not going to get their things. You're not going to get Cal, Cenk, until you guys can get to the point of saying, no. We're going to run our candidates and everything else. We're still going to work. We're still going to push. But when that fails, or if that fails, no, you don't get our vote. Until you can say that, you're not a threat. Until you can say you're not a threat. We have to push for a progressive Green Party and break up the corrupt two-party system. James Casserly. Yes, you should push for a Green Party, while at the same token, understanding the difficulties associated with a third party. Bob Ramirez, libertarian, person who thinks rules are for other people. That's funny. Libertarians are cartoonish. My one of my favorite people on this planet is a libertarian, and him and I will have these really good conversations. And I'm like, your philosophy doesn't really apply to the larger world. It doesn't make sense. This, you know, unless you want to live in a complete hellscape, the libertarian thing doesn't work. It's just fucking insane. Everybody's, you know, left to their own devices and all this other stuff. If you have poverty in a particular place and you have immense wealth in somewhere else, those people who are impoverished at a certain point are going to come and get you. There is no such thing as being me left to my own devices without making sure everybody else is left to their own devices. My freedom is your freedom. Those things are linked to one another. It's not a separate and distinct thing. It's not separate and distinct. The libertarian philosophy is insane. Tabitha Enriquez, libertarians, Democrats, Republicans are all pro-free market, total capitalists. Yes, it's true. And Nancy Pelosi said herself, we're capitalists. We're capitalists. Yeah, she said herself. Taking down Democratic Party will leave the Republicans, who many are now disillusioned with Trump, against everyone else. That independent voting bloc looks very powerful in contrast. P.T. Malm. Look, I am not optimistic about short-term American politics. Think of, take this from a wider scale for the moment. Let's zoom out from just the immediacy of these crooks in office. Understand the entire philosophical point of politics, like, or even governance in and of itself. You have a large group of people. Those people come together to make decisions for their needs, to make sure that the things that affect them and their society, the people of that particular society, even dealing with external threats, that governance, they take this position that no, everybody's not going to have the same position, but working together in this kind of cooperative way, we can come to some consensus on what we do that's best for the entirety of the country itself. That's the philosophical cartoon version of that. In reality, it becomes this kind of competitive thing where people fight tooth and nail, even at the point of stabbing the country itself in order to accede into office. Getting elected and the politics in the moment itself becomes all-consuming, and this idea of governance goes out the window. It becomes a secondary concern. I bring that up to kind of make this point that in the short term, it seems intractable. Almost it seems intractable. Or at the very least not intractable. It just seems gross. If governance initially was supposed to be this thing of, okay, what are the things that affect your society? What are the threats? What are the threats internally? What are the things that your society needs? And how do we come together to make decisions on how to make those things work? And you get the public itself involved in that decision-making process. The public makes the choice on what the public wants to do. Again, that's a comic book version of it. The reality is a little bit more complicated. But we've gone so far beyond that point that we're just in pure spectacle. That the substance of the government apparatus is almost not there at all. It's hollowed out at this point, in which you have these cartoons who get up there who are clearly bribed, who's lost all level of legitimacy when you're looking at polls and how the American public sees these people. And they just say things that they're paid to say. Whether they're paid to say it or whether they just have that agreement with that particular class, whatever, however it is. And for the most part, the parties are in agreement. The range of debate that these guys have is not really a range at all. They agree on the main tenor of the way things are. Meaning, external ideas, something like a Sanders, was not part of the political debate before. They didn't want it to be part of the political debate. This thing that Justice Democrats is like trying to shame these guys into it. Shame doesn't work. They're being bribed by your own argument, by your own position. They're being bribed. So if you're being bribed for a particular position and there's no consequence for it because they don't necessarily think you're a threat, then it doesn't matter what you say. The threat here is saying no. The threat here is saying no. Think of all the things that are adversely affecting your world and your society. Whether you're talking about climate, whether you're talking about this idea of nutrition in our foods, whether you're talking about animal agriculture, whether you're talking about gas and oil production destroying our habitable environment, whether you're talking about all of these extinction events around the globe, the plastic in our oceans, sperm count going down, one issue after the next that's adversely affecting us based on the decisions and the behaviors that we as human beings have taken on this planet. Most people, or a lot of people, don't care about the environmental stuff, even though the environmental stuff directly affects them. You've had 40% of the extinctions that have taken place over the last 40, 50 years. Now that is a massive fucking thing. If you had 40% of the animals in the zoo just vanish, people would be like, whoa, what happened to these animals? But because these things take place where they're so ensconced in their particular context, they don't pay attention. They don't see it as being all that relevant and important. The fact that the nutrient density in their food has gone down year after year after year because of the carbon that's in the environment, forcing that content down. It's like giving plants junk food, so those plants don't necessarily make as many nutrients. Doesn't come up. Doesn't come up. You had a candidate who screamed to high heaven that she believed in climate change, but was pushing fracking all across the planet. And that was the Democratic Party's candidate. That is an amazing position. That position is an oxymoron. Let's go for social for the moment. Your economic system is based on this idea of markets over people. And being based over markets over people, though, the main goal of it is maximization of profit. How do we maximize our profit? Now, in this game space where you're trying to consistently maximize your profit, what takes place from a societal standpoint is less relevant and less important to you than your immediate needs of maximizing your profit. There's a status associated with you having just ridiculous amounts of profit. You would think that that status would be the opposite, where people would look down on a person for having that much cash. We don't. We look at poverty, we look at scarcity, not having, as being a negative and a bad thing. So we look at the opposite almost naturally, per se, as being this kind of positive thing. This is almost just the reverse being the positive. Granted, there's societal engineering into that in the way that society arranges itself around the prevailing notion of that society. In our case, it's cash. So society arranges itself around ideas of cash and tries to justify the fact, cash in that way, justifies the income inequality in your society. Why is it this way? It justifies it. It gives an explanation and a reason for things that are in your particular society, that are vagaries of your particular society. Part of that capitalistic system, just as a natural logical consequence, if a person's trying to maximize their profit, if I can get a job done overseas for a quarter of the price that it costs here, meaning I can pay workers a third of what I pay American workers, then guess what? I'm moving that job overseas. And many of these candidates, like Hillary Clinton, Obama, and some of these other guys, and Bill Clinton, have allowed these trade deals to take place in a way that there is no penalty for me to do that. It makes business sense for me to eliminate all these jobs that are in the United States and send those jobs abroad and then bring those products back into the United States. The guy doesn't give a shit about society. He cares about how can I maximize my profit. Society tells him that's what he's supposed to do. That's what he does. This other thing, let's say that guy says, okay, I don't want to send my jobs overseas because I don't want to deal with that hassle, but I can automate this process. So I can fire all of these American workers. I can put in robots. I can essentially run the factory as a dark, meaning I don't necessarily even need to pay for lights, per se. Only when people goes in, they cut the lights on. Otherwise, I can keep the bills down. And I can accrue all of that profit to myself, and I can fire all of those American workers. Now, those workers don't have the money to pay for the products anymore, but that guy doesn't care. That guy cares about the short-term gain of maximizing his profit. That's your system. That's your system of governance. Now, the parties themselves don't touch that. They don't bring it up. These issues of class and these logical deductions based upon how our economic system is arranged don't apply. It doesn't apply. It doesn't even come up. Now, you have 50% of the country in poverty, and that number is just going to increase based upon the natural ebb and flow of your system, your market system. If your people aren't talking about that, what is going to be the natural consequence is that number gets worse, meaning as more and more people become unemployed, more and more people don't have the needs met. You have, what, 60% of people, they got a $500 card bill, couldn't afford to pay it. Think about that. The richest country on the planet. You have this country, $20 trillion in debt, don't have health care, don't have, and 20 million people being on health care. I mean, still don't have health care. Don't have education. You don't have many of the benefits and social safety nets that countries abroad in the West have. You don't have any of those things, and yet you're $20 trillion in debt. None of these questions get raised or asked by the people and the political leaders. You're being assailed externally by global threat based upon our behavior on this globe, and you're being assailed internally based on our own economic conditions and the way in which we arrange ourselves, our value system. If your politicians aren't having that conversation, then what the hell conversation are they having? And if you understand that those two things are extraordinarily catastrophic, those are things that need to be dealt with and need to be addressed, and they're not being addressed in any way at all. If you understand that those are things and those are factors in your society and they aren't being addressed, then you accept for the moment that your society is going to hit a wall. It can't persist in perpetuity in the way that it's going, either from a global standpoint or from a societal standpoint. Reality will assert itself. Why am I going to support a Democrat that for the most part maintains a status quo that is doomed to fail? Why? Why am I going to do that? If the original premise or the original basis that I need to come up with something is to say I'm not being complicit in status quo anymore, my answer is no. You can continue the way that you're going, but you're going to go that way without me. You're going to continue to lose. That is a miserable short-term strategy, but I am unaware of any other strategy. I would imagine that the people in the civil rights movement, when they were trying to cross that bridge in Selma, said this is a shitty prospect. We're going to get our heads beat in. They crossed that bridge anyway, by the way. There's a lift. There's always a lift. It's not that I think it's sexy. It's not that I think it's great. It's not that I think Republicans are fucking awesome and that I think they're great in office. I think they're batshit crazy and insane. But I think part of their insanity comes because of what the Democratic Party is. I don't think Republicans can get elected under normal circumstances if you had a Democrat representing what he's fundamentally supposed to represent. The rise of that party, meaning Republicans, is not because of their ideas. When you talk to people, their ideas are immensely unpopular. It's usually for a failing of the other party. Look, that's a lot of words, but I think those lot of words is accurate. I think what I'm saying is accurate. So the rich deserve to be rich, Ayn Rand. That's a Paul Ryan argument. Yeah. Hey Jamal, Shatu. Hey, what's going on, Stephanie? Marcella Stevenson. Yes, Hillary is a guy. She does not embody the feminine at all. But that's not fully her fault either. Like you've heard me make this argument before that, yes, we have people who represent certain things. We have people who are in certain places. But your issue is systemic. Your issue is systemic. Let's talk about Wonder Woman for the moment. And this is a slight detour. I don't want to make a point. One of the most glorious things about the Wonder Woman film is that she could kick ass, she could be a hard ass, and yet she retained her femininity. She was still a woman. Didn't matter what took place, she was still a woman. I think those qualities are admirable qualities. I think empathy is a beautiful thing. I think there's certain things that are associated with women that are beautiful qualities that men just can't pull off. We just, not necessarily can't pull off, we just don't pull it off well. So when Janeway is having a conversation in Star Trek and she's, being concerned and caring and empathetic, I can't see any of the other captains that are men having the same conversations or some of the conversations that she herself will have. And yet she would be a hard ass when she needed to be a hard ass. There's a flexibility and femininity that's difficult to pull off as men. Now, part of the difficulty is because society expects men to have a certain tenor, expect men to be tough. Wonder Woman was able to pull off this thing of toughness, but at the same token of still being a woman and feminine. It's an admirable thing to pull off. And I'd argue that our politics, for the most part, could use that. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a strong thing. The catch is, when women take office, women don't necessarily do that. Oftentimes, women try to out-masculine the men in that way. Meaning, I'm going to be more hawkish, I'm going to be more this, I'm going to be more that. Because they understand that strength is prized as opposed to weakness is not. And if the public sees that femininity or that empathy as weakness, then they find that to be a negative thing. So yes, Theresa May is going to be somewhat of a hard ass when she goes and does her thing. Yes, Hillary Clinton is going to be, this kind of hawkish warmonger. She may feel it, but it also could be a political position. Yeah, man, it's just take for the moment that some of the stuff is systemic. Some of the stuff is you're incentivized to be a particular way. Meaning, if I believe I need to do this to take office, then you end up being somewhat harder than what you would typically be. Hell, that may not necessarily be something she just automatically did. She might have been groomed over the course of 20 years to be that way. Or just learn through this kind of soft, positive and negative reinforcements. They tend to be more hard asses. That was the most admirable trait of Wonder Woman. That was the most awesome trait about Janeway. You can make a case of whether or not Janeway was a good captain. But the dimensions of femininity add something to the character that men have a hard time pulling off. That's all. Yeah, that's all. Q is hot. Q is husbando. I don't know what that means. Stefan Chateau, without a home, are you in a library? Tabitha Enriquez, he's been squashed since early 70s when we were talking about single pair 40 years ago, yeah. I think it's more important that she's kind of psycho than manly. Yeah, that too. Psycho is too strong. Psycho, and maybe I'm being too specific. I know what you mean when you say it. Hey you. Hi, my library, my ex hated that I wasn't specific. Libraries are on your fingertips, by the way. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what that one means. Yes, progressive policies are more popular in surveys, but Democrats are unpopular. Yes, that's true. Yeah, they don't have, I made this point before that the left doesn't have anything to articulate its will. And they're continuously trying to push that through the Democratic Party. And I understand why. The apparatus is necessary. Third parties are just a hard way to go. But they are slapping you down at each turn. They're slapping you down. And making videos crying and whining about it. If I was in Cal's shoes, would I make a video crying and whining about it? Maybe. I would hope, though, that I would... Yeah, at a certain point, I just start to balk. I just start to say no. I don't like being taken for granted. I don't like being taken advantage of. I don't like being lied and cheated. I don't like any of those things. So when it comes down to it, just as a person, just as a human being with a certain amount of respect for himself, I say no, and I walk. I take my ball and go home. You win based on your own devices. Does that give you... Would they respect you for it? I would hope so, as opposed to this kind of just ignoring you and pretending you don't exist right now. This doesn't look like respect to me. This look like they're just, you have nowhere else to go. We can do whatever we want. You're still going to vote for us. So what does it matter? Bitch and complain all you want. We're still getting your votes. That's what this looks like to me. You saying no is a fundamentally different phenomena, or fundamentally different board. The status quo is literally killing the planet. Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is. They want to win. They do not want to change. It's who they are. That's true also. Yes, I think you're talking about Democrats. Yes, it's true. They don't want to change. Most things try to persist themselves the way they are. It's like they try to find this, it's like self-justifying in some way. They cannibalized the Democratic Party and got rid of the New Deal. Well, you have these other guys who are trying to take that back and reinstall the New Deal. I'd argue that the New Deal doesn't go far enough, because the New Deal was ultimately just trying to save capitalism, trying to save it from itself. I don't think it goes far enough. But it takes you in a better direction. So that's the first point. They're trying to do what third way Dems did. That's what they're trying to do. Will they be successful? That's a wait and see. Right now, though, they're being slapped down at every turn. Yeah. Yeah. A certain amount of dignity is just like, no. It's just saying no. How is that not psycho? Because psycho is specific to the relative perspective of the person. Like, what I mean is, I think it is fucking insane in the way our society is arranged. I think all of us, to some degree, are somewhat psycho in the way we go about our way. Hillary Clinton, you can say, is an extra special case of psycho, but which part of it is psycho? The hawkish thing, yes, but you have a lot of people who are hawks who think that they can go in and invade other territories. Now, if politics and all this other stuff is secular, meaning we can't bring God into this, then ultimately what they're trying to go after is this thing of dominance. That's their prevailing thought. How do we retain our dominance? They're playing chess. They're just doing so with lives that they don't necessarily care about. In their mind, they don't give a shit about the lives. They want dominance. How can we preserve the United States' dominance in the foreseeable future? Now, I call this psycho behavior because I don't necessarily care about dominance. I care about people having access to the things that they need and having a good fucking life. Whether that's here, whether that's abroad. From my relative perspective, what she's going with seems psycho because it creates havoc and chaos in the world itself. So yeah, from a relative perspective, yes. She would argue that it's not psycho at all. That the United States need to maintain a certain amount of dominance and that you have markets and all this other stuff. That's his worldview. All of this stuff purely boils down to what are you trying to accomplish. Now, you can make a case that Hillary Clinton is psycho if she's saying, I'm trying to do world peace at the same time being a hawk. Those two things don't go in tandem. Is what the person's saying consistent with what the person is doing? And that's where you get into this idea of, you know, relative perspective and everything else. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish, man. From my perspective, yes, psycho. Do you record live chat and come back to get more perspective? I've always wondered this. No, I don't. I do it on the fly. Hey, I do it on the fly. I have I would read the article and I would have a feeling about it. Like it would be something that would burn in me for a particular direction. And I would try to understand what that feeling is and why I'm having that particular feeling. Sometimes I do that on the fly. Meaning it's like a freestyle or something like that, where it's just almost like a channel, just kind of flows out of you. But no, there are times where I do pre-recorded videos where I have to do it over and over and over and over again because I'm not getting it right. Or when I do pre-recorded when I'm trying to like give more context on stuff and that type of thing, in which case it takes longer to kind of fill the story out. In those cases, yeah, that's a little bit more research. But for this is more, you know, how do I feel about what these guys are trying to accomplish? I take them at their word that what they're trying to accomplish is earnest. It just becomes they're slapping you down. They're slapping you down. Now, that's how I feel about it. Everything else from that flows from just the feeling itself and just tuning into that particular feeling. If I'm wrong on it, then I'll come back and say I was wrong on it. Or if somebody says something during the chat that contests something I'm saying, I would either agree or disagree. It's funny. My wife has this tendency of being, I call it a pessimist. Like she takes opposing positions sometimes. I think just to take opposing positions. I think in her mind, she doesn't like this thing of digging into people's psyche, like trying to figure out their motives and intentions and everything else. She thinks that's a little sometimes. The very she doesn't like me doing it to her family and to her. That's the first part. The second part is she thinks that sometimes I'm too sure of my perceptions. Now, I don't think that's true. I don't think I'm overly sure of my perceptions at all. I usually go with this from a standpoint of ambiguity. But I can be pretty strong in trying to get an opinion across. And that opinion tends to just flow out of me relatively easily. It's not something I need to force or fight to get out. And I think she takes the contrary perspective just to kind of, I don't want to say to be a dick about it, but just to be this thing of, how do you know? How do you know? How are you sure about this? Why do you believe this? Why are you sure about this? This kind of contrarian in a sense. No, it's not pre-recorded. That is how Washington State Senator Patty Murray is. She doesn't care about us and she takes her seat for granted. If you give them your vote for granted, then they're going to take their seat for granted. It's like, how are you blaming them for taking you for granted if you allow yourself to be taken for granted? That's all I'm saying, man. That's all I'm saying. 10 months, Jamal getting all connections to make the Russia scared. What? 10 months, Jamal, of getting all her connections to make a Russian scared to get at Julian. That's totally psycho. It's chess. You're Hillary Clinton. You lose an election that they gave you over $1 billion. And you lose that reaction to a reality show host. A reality show host that you helped push up because you thought that was the only candidate that you had a chance of beating. And you got the candidate that you wanted. And he was gross. He was over the top. You had videos coming about, grab him by the pussy. You, the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton paid to have a dossier saying he was peed on. Talking about Mexicans and Hispanics were rapists and drug dealers. Starts a campaign off that way. And you lose to that guy. You lose. Flat out lose. You fail. You get pummeled. Is it good sense to say it wasn't my fault? Like, is it a human thing to obfuscate and say it wasn't my fault? It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. There were these other reasons. It was Russia. It was Russia. It was Russia. Russia hacked us. Russia was the reason why I lost. They weaponized truth and reality, and they beat the stuffing out of me and my supporters with reality. That's not an insane position to take if you're purely politics, if you're trying to purely obfuscate from why you failed. It makes sense. The question is, from an integrity standpoint, oh, it's gross. From an integrity standpoint, oh, it's absolutely gross. Your issue as a progressive is the grossness of it. It's, oh, that woman has no shame. That I agree with you on. That I agree with you on. But psycho gets across this perspective to me of, again, words are slippery, so fair enough. I don't know what you have in your brain in regards to what psycho means. It's just a word. But you yourself have this coloring and feeling and everything else associated with it. The word is not just this kind of flat thing to you. The word is this, there's a very particular perspective. Your thoughts and everything else are connected to that in a way that have connections. You have that in your head as a very specific thing. Fair enough. There's no way I can ever touch what that is. What I can say is, to define my terms, I look at the psycho thing as being, is what she's doing insane with regards to what she's trying to accomplish? If she's trying to obfuscate from the public, realizing that she just failed on a massive fucking level, red baiting, it's not a horrid way to do it. It's shameless. It's dangerous. It's gross in the way that it's being done. But from a purely politics standpoint, if you don't give a shit about the country or anything else, if everything was just a chess piece and there was no connection to those pieces at all, do you sacrifice the bishop? Yeah, you sacrifice the bishop. Yeah, you're going to say Russia and all this other stuff. You're going to throw anything into the mix that you can to try to say, don't look at me, look at Russia. It didn't work, by the way. People were still looking at her. And that book tour completely backfired. If you want to say psycho because of the book tour, fair enough. That book tour backfired magnificently. Part of this, though, is I don't think she wanted to leave this thing alone of why she failed so bad. And I think it burns and it's embarrassing. I think it just burns. Yeah, man, I think that burns. I can think of all the situations in which I failed in my life. And none of them match even 1% of what I would imagine the failure feels like to lose to Donald fucking Trump in a populist campaign. And you're the Democrat. So yes. Have you heard of Vermin Supreme? I have not. I have you asking Jamal, asking what? It's psycho to me. Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. No empathy for other people. Care about people who are paying her. I'm pretty sure she had empathy for the people who greased the palms of Bill Clinton by $500,000 and put $2 million in the Clinton Foundation. I'm pretty sure she had massive, superhuman amount of empathy for those people. The Wall Street people greasing her pockets and stuffing money in Bill Clinton's G-string. I would imagine that Bill Clinton has all the empathy in the world for the people who are stuffing money in his pockets. Fucking brimming with empathy. She's just raging angry as all. She's embarrassed. How do you as a person act when you're embarrassed? Not just embarrassed on a small level, on a massive fucking level of the entire country. It's embarrassing. You even make a case the world. You make the case the world. They give you $1 billion. And they've come out. This has gotten so pathetic and ridiculous that they're trying to make this argument that $150,000 in Facebook ads toppled her presidency. That Hillary Clinton had $1 billion to run an election, but she was thwarted by $150,000 in Facebook ads. Here's a question. Did Hillary Clinton in any way buy Facebook ads herself? Did Hillary Clinton or her camp spend $1 million on trolls on Twitter because she couldn't find people to actually back her up organically? Give me this shit about $150,000. This stuff is getting ridiculous. It's getting absolutely absurd. Exactly, Jamal. She does have that empathy. She does have that empathy. Yeah, like I said, the people who are paying them. Stephanie, my pupils shrink and I get a calm face. So disobedience. $150,000 goes a long way on Facebook. It must have. It must have. I mean, shit, man. I need to start buying Facebook ads. If $150,000 can overwhelmed. $1 billion in ads. Yeah, I need to get on Facebook. I need to get on Facebook. I mean, even if I spend $1,000, fuck, man, that should get me a long way. That should give me a governorship. Trump paid his first group of fans during the initial press release to announce he was running. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. When he came down that escalator, those people were paid actors. Those people were paid. Civil disobedience, laugh my fucking ass off. Hey, you, Rob, I don't look at it like that. Vote green. Rebel Cage Rattler. Sorry for my typos tonight. I am stuck with my iPhone with my goofy thumbs. Ah, you're okay, Rebel. Borg 48. Not if you're a member of the Apache tribe. Then the DNC just fleeces you for the money. If you are a part of anything, put it this way. If you're a lefty, come on, man. Come on. They pass healthcare. Democrats have been trying to pass healthcare, what, 50, 60 years. They get it passed, and they leave 30 million people off the rolls. 8 years has passed, and we're still talking about healthcare. And the healthcare legislation was so weak that the incoming president, the Republican, can gut it if he wanted to. He could come with an executive order and gut that law if he wanted to. He's not going to do it, but he could. It's weakness, man. Bob Ramirez, as explained to death already, vote green has the impact of staying home in bed. Oh, that's going to start a fight. That's going to start a fight. Dear Jamal, why are Hillary and Trump still not in jail? Your fan, Steph. There's an investigation going on in the Trump into Russian collusion. That investigation started on a pretense that was insanity. It's fucking ridiculous. But whatever, it started. Mueller has expanded the scope of that investigation to business dealings between Trump and Russia. That I do believe Trump is guilty on. I think they probably have Trump dead to rights on this thing of business dealings with Russia. He did have business dealings with Russia. There's connections between Trump and the Russian mob. So I would imagine that's a potential. They've started to investigate Hillary Clinton now too. It's fucking amazing, man. It's just... Look, our elections are not the envy of the world. These people do not have a superhuman level of integrity where they can get a huge amount of money and still represent the interests of the people in your society. You can either have capitalism or you can have a democracy. You can't have both. You can't have both. You cannot have both. Fingers crossed. Please, please, double hanging. Mercedes Kelly, not Uranium 1 status. Darius Adams. So which one is it? Let the DNC burn to the ground and be rebuilt with progressive policies, or vote third party. Lefties are their own worst enemy. Darius Adams. Agree. I don't know the answer to that. And the answer may be both. I think you should let the party burn to the ground, providing the person who's running is representing your interests. Like, I keep making that caveat. If somebody is running and that person is, I like that guy, the guy is representing my interests. If Nina Turner runs, I'm probably going to vote for Nina Turner. I like her. Now, what I mean by that is, if your candidate does not exceed in the primaries, then yeah, vote green. I don't think I'm wrong on this point. Like, I honestly don't think I'm wrong on this. If you are always complicit, what's the reason for the change? What's the reason for the change? How do you compel a change of behavior if you always go along with the behavior? That's what I'm stuck with. The only answer to that question is to say no. I'm not going. I'm balking. I'm making a turn. I'm doing something different right now. You can bitch and moan and complain or anything else, but yes, I'm going to balk. I'm going to stomp my feet. I'm going to be a malcontent. I'm going to say bad things about your party because your party is not representing my interests. But all of this is contingent upon the person who's running. Is that specific individual representing your interests? That's all. I don't think a vote for green is synonymous with staying in bed, but I understand what your point. So tell me. Let me ask the question. I'll ask the question. If Green Party candidates and third parties, for the most part, have a hard way to go, because I told you that esoteric other, that thing is always on your shoulder where the American public looks and says, I would vote for this guy if the other person did. They're saturated with media that tells them there are only two parties and the range of debate is between those two parties. How do you change it if that's the way it is? How do you change it? Again, my argument is I think you start with the fundamental level of saying no. I'm not budging until I see something that's different. But how do you change it? Because it's a fair point that Bob is making. There are some Green Party candidates that won office, particularly in California. But let's be honest, they have a hard way to go. And often the parties have a vested interest in trying to exclude Green Party candidates from the mix. They want to stay in office, so they do what they need to do to try to exclude those candidates from getting into the political situation. It makes sense for them to do that. This has nothing to do with integrity. This has everything to do with winning. So what's the solution? I would argue the solution is a movement in that way, meaning the energy and the money that's getting put into this stuff is not for candidates. It's for the public itself to kind of raise up this thing of pitchforks. Your candidates will naturally evolve from the pitchforks that you yourself are raising up. I don't think you force a candidate in that way. I think the candidate rises, if that makes sense. But I gotta be honest, I don't know another solution. I know of no other solution in that way. I'm without solution on this. Bob Romero said, oh, so Jamal is prepared to get Howard Dean again, like he got Bernied. Oh, he got Bernied. I love that. We're going to Virginia, and we're going to Atlanta, and we're going to Georgia, and we're going to California. Please tell me you remember that. Please tell me that reference makes sense. This is the Howard Dean thing where Howard Dean was on stage and they buried his campaign after that. The infamous I didn't get Howard Dean. I would argue I didn't get Bernie because Bernie is still a factor and Bernie is pushing the debate to the left. Whether you want to make that case about Nina Turner, I don't know. I don't know. People get too scared into making practical choices, and we don't get an honest opinion of what everyone wants. That's true, Stephanie. But people aren't crazy for that. It's not that they get, yeah, it is fear, but it's also they want their vote to count. Like I have 3 people running. There's one person who fully represents my interests, but I don't think that other people will vote for that person. So what is the least worst scenario that I'm willing to deal with? In which case, your equation becomes different. Now, if you have something like ranked choice voting, where you just vote for the person who you want, and you can vote for your second choice, that's different. But in our system, you're somewhat penalized for that vote in that way, unless you have a belief that a lot of other people are going to vote in that direction. If media can convince you that there are only 2 parties and that third parties are fringes, then you're always going to have this issue of an uphill climb for third parties. You need to find a way to break that process, and I don't know how you break that process. Dean ran as controlled opposition. Dean got buried. Jamal, scroll up. I was saying why we need to get ranked choice voting in every state. Yeah, Stephanie, I agree with you. Civil disobedience. George Carlin famously said he didn't believe a political solution would end the class war in the United States peacefully. His quote was something like, blood would have to flow. Look, at the end of the day, you have a top 1% that have access to the overwhelming majority of the material wealth and resources in your nation. They own the factories, they own the cash, they have a political apparatus that is completely obsequious to them, and they have cops and military that will bust your head and put you in a cage if you do anything to try to tackle that property. What takes place when you have taxi drivers out of work because Uber just has cars just automatically go from point A to point B? What takes place when convenience stores and all these service jobs, the majority of jobs in the United States are service jobs? What happens when those jobs vanish because those people aren't needed because those processes are automated? What happens when poverty in your country continues to get higher and higher and higher, while wealth also tends to get higher and higher and higher? The extremes between those things get worse and worse and worse. There needs to be, at some point, there would have to be a change. Part of that change would have to be changing the way power is accrued in regards to markets and regards to capital. I don't know what that looks like, but that change needs to take place. It needs to take place. So, damn, I was wearing my Bose in-ear headphones and Jamal's pounded my skull bones. I think I'm definitely, I'm sorry. Civil disobedience. We're told that there's no class warfare. It was going to be pre-evolution. There is class warfare. Class warfare is a conversation that needs to take place. Kidnapping replaces paper routes for kids' after-school jobs. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's dark. Bob Romero said, computer programming is now in the top endangered jobs according to BLS. Yeah, that's my career. That's my career. When I first started my career, a website was like $1 million. Think about that. It's like $1 million for a website. Then you came out with tools that would make that system easier to do, where anybody, for the most part, can just drag and drop items in. My job is a little bit more technical than that. I do beyond websites. We like data-driven solutions and that type of stuff. But automation will get to the point where that stuff becomes easier and easier to do. So engineers may be building this stuff out now, getting rid of other people's jobs. But at some point, those jobs are also going to be on the chopping block. We're making ourselves obsolete. All right, guys. It's been an hour. I don't think I have anything else to say. So I am going to leave it at that. I'm going to put the link to Cal's Darius Adams. Scroll up. More about Justice Democrats. I wasn't here for the beginning of the stream. Let's see. Scroll up. Darius. Let's see. But if the Justice Democrats, for the most part, have a progressive platform, then what's wrong with them trying to change the DNC from within? Aren't the Justice Democrats movement you're talking about? So that's a good question. And that's actually a really good point. So let me answer that before I go. I don't think there's anything wrong with the Justice Democrats trying to change them from within. God bless. Hurl and do anything. Scratch and bitch and do whatever you need to do to try to tear the party from asunder. You have my complete agreement on that point. I have no issue with them doing that. My issue is it going to be successful? And at every turn, you're being slapped down. Like, it's not a situation where, you know, Justice Democrats are doing something. Democrats have failed so much that they say, okay, here are the keys to the car. It's been, we're doubling down. We're purging the members who supported Sanders or Ellis. We're not... What was the other thing that was done recently? We're putting Donna Brazil on a thing. We're putting in corporatists and lobbyists. We're not giving you the things that Democrats are supposed to get when you're running in those elections. They're doubling down. We have a unity commission, but yes, we're purging the people after the moment that people take their eyes off of it. Yes, 50 million people have left the party. Yes, we installed Tom Perez against our bylaws. Meaning, the things that they did when they were having that election, having that stuff in secret, was against their own bylaws. It was against their own bylaws. So, in one step after the next, they're getting across their position to you. They're sticking the thumb in the eye of leftists and progressives. My only issue with this is not so much that they're trying to change it from the inside. God bless. Do what you have to do. Fight on all cylinders. That's not my issue. My issue is, will it A, be successful? And B, where is your leverage if ultimately at the end of it all, if your candidates lose, you're still going to be willing to say, vote Democrat? That's my issue. That's my point. That's the only point I'm getting at. Your leverage vanishes the moment that you're willing, that they know you're going to be complicit. How much leverage do I have over the party itself? If that party knows that when my candidate loses, that ultimately I'm still going to fall in line and just vote for whoever the Democrat. I'm not going to tell my network to not vote for the Democrat. I am going to fall in line and I'm going to be a good soldier when I lose. That's my issue. Any fundamental change that they want to take place should, yes, start with this idea of we're trying to take it over. Fair enough. That's their strategy. But if that strategy doesn't work, if it doesn't work, if at the end of the day, the Democrats aren't afraid of their candidates, because I don't think they're afraid of their candidates, if I'm being honest. Otherwise, they wouldn't behave this way. What does TYT, Justice Democrats, Cal Kalinske, what do they do if their candidates fail? Do they turn around and say support the Democrats that cheated their guy, that mismanaged the resources of the Democratic Party, and that ultimately purged out members who were trying to push the party to the left? If you're willing at the end of the day to still say it doesn't matter what the party does, vote for them, you have no leverage. That's all I'm getting at. Politics is not about being nice. It's not a situation where they're just going to say, oh, here are the keys. Politics works on leverage. What do I have on a person? How can I make them hurt? How can I make them lose? What do I have that I can cling to, that I can drag them to my position? That's politics. Without it, you have nothing. The behavior of the Democrats gets across a certain perspective of, you guys have squat. That's all I'm getting at. They need to be willing to say no. As a network, TYT needs to be willing to say no. They need to be willing to say no. Rebel Rodney Jacobson, I agree. Section 31 will be all. I love that. Rebel Cage Rattler, thank you so much, Jamal. I am back in my warrior mode. Been in funky, apathetic mood all day. I appreciate the group pep talk, and thank you, everyone. Yeah. You should be in your warrior mode. Take out your swords, and take out your knives, and take out your shields. This is not the time to be apathetic. This is not the time to be resting on your laurels. This is not the time to be in a funk. You are going to have a war that takes place in 2020. A war. Now, even with the Justice Democrats thing, they have, what, 20-something candidates who are running in office. Some are running against Republicans. Some are running against corporate Democrats. So whether or not I think they can necessarily win all these elections, there's a probabilistic percentage that they may win some. They may get some of those people in office. Now, 2020 is what I'm curious about, because that will be the breaking of the Democratic Party. That's what I think. I think that's what a party breaks. I could be wrong. But I think if you're talking about a sea change, your best chance as a progressive is what you have right now. I know there's infighting. I know we're nipping at each other at times. I know there's battling and shit talking and all this other stuff. And I know it seems like we're trying to, drown each other. But that's because we don't have an external threat right now, or external enemy in the sense. We do, in the sense of Democrats and Republicans. But right now, progressives see themselves as being something fundamentally distinct and different from the Democratic Party. This note that I read from Justice Democrats, like I said, reads as if you had another party attacking another party, not people within the same party having to go at each other. You're fundamentally different. You're separate and distinct from the party. You just don't have anything to articulate your will into the political apparatus of this country. So yeah, you are going to be in a funk. You are going to feel a particular way. But if you get the chance in 2020 to put somebody in that office that would break what the Democratic Party has as their normal way of acting, I would say take it. If you want to grab your shield and sword, that would be the time to do it. And I would say be relentless. If you're looking for a way to create some kind of change in this country, 2020 would be the time to do it. Even if you had a bunch of Democrats in office, threatening their seats, making them fear for their political lives. I just think this is a better option. That's all. I think threatening is a better option than begging and pleading for them to do right. That's all. That's all. Rodney Jack. JD have to do an Eric Cantor move. Dax, are you Jink? I love you, bro. Look, he makes a good point. If you're looking at 3 pages of people to vote for, it's hard to know all of them. A voter guide would help. Yeah. Well, it goes beyond that, though. Like, a voter guide would help. But for the moment, take yourself out of your own context. Think of all the people in this country, 325 million people in the country. We are in a very small sandbox in comparison to the rest of the country. It's like, how much impact is Justice Democrats having in the wider world? And that I don't know. I need to look that up. Look, I actually hope they win in some of these seats. I want them to. Swearengin in West Virginia, I like her. I hope she takes Joe Manchin out of his seat. God knows I hope she takes Joe Manchin out of his seat. And it would shock their goddamn conscience if they start getting their seats cannibalized by lefties. So yes, in that sense, yeah, it's not that I'm not on board with their platform, if that makes sense. I'm uncomfortable with this idea of a media organization being associated with a political body. Because if you're a media organization, you're supposed to tell people the truth. You have a bias built into the fact that you have a political body associated with it. Are you just telling me shit just because of, you're associated with this particular candidate? So I'm sketchy on that part, so fair enough. But for me, this stuff is candidate specific at this point. There's nothing to do with parties. Nothing at all to do with parties. I feel out of place here in my pro-libtard corporate Democrat area, and they make sure I know it. Wear it like armor. Wear it like armor. They can never use it against you. I am never more what I am when I am in the presence of somebody else. When I am abroad, I am never more American than I am, when I'm abroad. When I'm in the United States, African Americanness and everything else. When you're abroad, you just consider American. I welcome those conversations. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. When the people at work, you had all these Hillary supporters, and they're like looking down on me. They talk down to me. Oh, he doesn't understand politics. He doesn't get it. He should just vote for Hillary Clinton. Somebody need to teach him and tell him that he should vote for Hillary Clinton. I don't understand why you're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Are you telling me that Bernie Sanders loses, you're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton? Talk down to me. There was a part of me that full well understood that I was right. Sometimes it might have been deeper down than others, but usually I understood that I was right. And I wore that and I held it at the midst of them saying bad things to me about Hillary Clinton. At a certain point, I became more militant about this. And it wasn't, there was a small part of me that thought I was right. It was asserting my will, the fact that I knew I was right, onto each and every one of them. If the shit needs to burn, then let it burn. I will make that argument, whoever I need to make that argument to. And I make a case that it's a hard case to make, to tell me that I'm wrong. Now the reason it's a hard case to make, it depends. If you're a lefty, and you're being attacked from the left, and your support is of the Democratic Party, then you have a fundamental problem. How are you defending a party that's not to the left, even though you're calling yourself a lefty? You're going to lose that argument. You don't have a choice but to lose the argument. Just the position that you're taking. Now, if you're a right-winger, that's a little bit different because your goals and what you believe in is different. But if you call yourself a Democrat, and you call yourself a lefty, and you're having a conversation with somebody who's a burner, or somebody who's from the left of you, oh, dude, you're going to lose that argument. Your party doesn't represent what it says it represents. Meaning you are going to fail in that case. I will make that case any day of the week on Sundays. Wear your position like armor. If they want to have that talk, have that talk. Have that talk. Absolutely. If Democrats treated Justice Democrats like they treated Sanders' campaign, they are. They are. That's their point. Cal's entire video is that point. They're treating us bad. You know, they're not being fair in regards to the way they would typically go about giving us information and everything else to run the campaign. That's exactly what he's saying. That's exactly what he's saying. Dimiji, goddamn right, Jamal. Let it burn. Couldn't look at my kids in the eyes selling out. Yeah. Everyone knows that TYT already has a bias. Read the comments under any video involving race. Yeah, nobody's perfect. They have their issues. One of the most infuriating conversations that I had, and I'll leave it on this, was with one of the guys that I work with. It was a guy I made a bet with ultimately, where he was supposed to wear a Bernie Sanders shirt if Hillary Clinton lost the election. He never wore that shirt, by the way. He never held up on that bet. I gave him my Bernie Sanders shirt to wear, and I left it in his office so it could be a constant reminder of her failure and that his understanding of politics doesn't apply. And I asked questions afterwards. Does this mean that your political acumen wasn't what you thought it was? Does it mean that what you believed of the world and of the country didn't apply? That you were wrong? That you were completely wrong? Your understanding of this stuff was wrong. I tried to use wrong and failed as many times as I could in this sentence when I was having a conversation. Now, we had this conversation about Democrats and all the burners and lefties and all this other stuff. And I made the point to him that your world is burning. Your world is burning. The area of the edifice that is supposed to do something about this is the left. And you're going with this idea of just, you know, we're just having politics and all this stuff. Fuck that. It's not just politics for the sake of politics. Politics is supposed to be done to get shit done for the population itself, to deal with threats that are availing your society, be it external or internal. What does the population need? That's politics. That's what it's supposed to philosophically be. Now, this idea of wheeling and dealing just for the sake of wheeling and dealing and all this, fuck that. Fuck that. Status quo cannot persist the way status quo has been persisting. It needs to change. If that means that the vehicle for that change is supposed to be the left and it's supposed to be the Democrats, and the Democrats are in no way capable of doing that, then that party needs to fail miserably in order to redo it into something that has the capacity of actually delivering that change. That's a basic argument. Now, any other argument that goes along with that goes into what Republicans are batshit crazy. Aren't you concerned of the short-term things that they're going to do and all that other stuff? Yes. But that doesn't mean Democrats should get a pass. It doesn't mean they should get a pass. And the fact is, anything that you really need to get to take place in your country is going to come from the left. We are the conscience of this nation. Now, if we ourselves, being the conscience of this nation, completely are complicit in the things that take place in regards to the two-party system, then what does that leave this nation? What does it leave us? What does it leave us? Your country needs to change. You have no avenue right now, as things stand in these two-party systems, for that change to take place. Something needs to burn for something else to be for something else to be reformed. That's my position. That's what I think. I don't understand this argument of continuously voting for something that doesn't represent your interests. I'm giving you money even though you're not doing anything for the money that I'm giving you. Thanks for the cash. I'm going to continue to not do anything for the money that you give me. If selling out was an answer, America would be #1 already. Yeah. It is #1, just not in the way that we like to think. Never thought that I would have to re-educate myself with history and socioeconomics. All countries, doesn't matter what the country is, tries to persist itself. Doesn't matter what it is. Meaning they try to give you a workable point of view with which to act. That workable point of view is going to look at itself as being deified. We're the greatest country on the earth. We have this awesome, checks and balances. America, when it does something for the right reasons. Any war that America has taken on is taken because it didn't have a choice. Soldiers, when they're in these countries, they're doing it because, bravery and patriotism and all this other stuff. We go into countries, we fight these things. The United States cares about freedom and democracy and justice and all this other stuff. All these things are lies. All these things are just propaganda. That cop who's locking up the stoner is not a peacekeeper. He could be an alcoholic, and yet he's locking up somebody else who's just smoking pot. He's not a good guy. When those guys are out there bashing protesters and everything else, those are not good people. The responsibility of the cop is to keep the order. It's nothing to do with keeping you safe. Nothing to do with keeping you safe. They would bash your heads in as soon as they're told to bash your heads in. They've even gotten to the point where they can put military on home soil for quote-unquote terrorist actions. But again, we get into this thing of language. What does it mean to be a terrorist? Who's making the definition of the terrorist? Now, the problem is that language changes depending upon who's in office. Yes, you need to re-educate yourself. The things that you were told were lies. You were inundated with lies. It's not fun. Societies try to persist themselves and make themselves seem better than what they are. We're just people, man. We're not exceptional. We're not any of that stuff. We had a certain advantage after World War II, and we milked that advantage. Well, that advantage is coming to an end because we overly played our hand. We're not a unit power anymore, unipolar power. This country or this world, for the most part, is the European Union, is Russia, is China, it's all these other people vying for control. Yes, I agree with you. It's one of those things where one day you just kind of wake up and like, wait a minute, is this what the fuck is going on? Like, shocking, startling. Like you end up in this situation of like, everything that I've been told was a lie. My mom told me one day, she said, "Boo, if you weren't into this stuff, I would not know any of it. I wouldn't know any of it." What you're told, what you're inundated with is unreal. It's like unreality. It's propaganda. Context is usually not necessarily there because context doesn't necessarily help the opinion of the governing class. Yeah. You're being exploited. You're being lied to. They're shipping your jobs overseas because it's profitable. Corporations, those happy characters that you see in your commercials aren't real. Those things are digital avatars. That's a corporation that's out there trying to make as much money as possible using an advertisement to kind of divert your attention from the fact that it's trying to make as much money as possible on your back. That's your society, man. Everybody's chiseling off the other person. Everybody's trying to advantage themselves off the other person. Integrity is a difficult prospect. It's a difficult prospect. It's not cost effective. Civil disobedience. I hope I live to see the end of capitalism. I do too, but I'm not holding my breath. Rebel Cage Rattle. I'm suddenly hearing that song Hungry Eyes to Beat Enriquez. Me too. You're my hero, Rob. Oh, that's awesome, Rob. Rob is heroes. The only threat of nuclear war, which I think is not as much of a threat as some, are the wild tweets are really different so far. There's an uptick in violence, but it's at a record low. It's just that the weapons that we have right now are so fucking over the top. Congress, or Democrats in Congress, were pushing legislation to try to force Donald Trump's hand in not having a nuclear war. Meaning they were trying to say, we're preventing a preemptive strike on on North Korea. That's Democrats. They're literally trying to pass the legislation. It's fucking amazing. When Obama was trying to do a preemptive strike on Syria, no issue with that at all. No issue at all. Rob, Illinois. It's not going to happen. When the economic system is declined, it takes many, many decades for it to go away, and for violence will be the last step. Or it implodes dramatically, in which case there's violence immediately. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, man. People are being exploited wholesale. And they understand it to some degree. And yet they fall in line and just do what they're told. They think they're working 40, 50 hours a week, using all of your energy and drive and all of these things that make up you as a human being, putting all that value and potential energy into making a buck for somebody else. They believe that that's a life. They believe that's a life. In their mindset, spending the overwhelming majority of your time using your resources and skills to make somebody else rich is a life. That's not a life. That's called something else. Now, when slavery imploded, you can make a case that that particular system limped along and changed into something else, which is the capitalistic system we have. Okay, we'll just pay him. We'll just pay him. Now mind, you're going to pay those people less and less and less because it allows you to make more and more profits. But I'm also getting into the mindset of people. Your society has the technological know-how to essentially make most of the labor that takes place in your society redundant. Now, this is taking place at a normal thing, meaning just as a natural flow, just because of technology, the way capitalism moves. This thing of maximizing profit. So yeah, I'm going to ship job overseas. I'm going to automate process. I'm going to automate as many processes as I want, or as I can. You know, that robot is not going to bitch. It's not going to moan. It's not going to have a girlfriend that gets ill. It's not going to have a wife that gets ill. It's not going to have a husband that gets ill. It's not going to feel blue. It's not going to want to go on Christmas vacation. None of those things. So yes, I'm going to put that robot in. It's not even going to need lights on. I can even save money on lights. Yeah, that's your society, man. I don't understand. You would think people would say, let people be people. I don't want people doing fries. Yeah, think about that. That person who's doing that fries, who's doing french fries, that person is one of the most amazing pieces of technology that we are aware of in this universe. The potential of that particular person is immense. The things that that person can conjure in their mind, the things that they can think of, the things that they can put down and do, whether it's song, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's just expression, whatever it is. Hell, whether it's physics, science, math, whatever. Immense, immense potential. And that person is doing french fries. Something's wrong with your society if you're using human potential to do stupid shit like that. I don't want people doing those things. If there's any process that can be automated, I want the process automated. I want people to have time to actually be people and live their lives. People have this idea of heaven. It's like, oh, when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. What about now? What prevents you from changing your world in a way that makes this place a hell of a lot better than what it is? There's no God above that's forcing your planet to be this way. This is choice. This is choice. Like yeah, this is choice. Like, it's aggravating to me. It's robots. It's you know, profit. A, it's not real. B, you're advantaging somebody else, meaning you're giving all this resources and everything else to get somebody else rich. And if people in the society never come together and say, hey, let's make sure all of our needs are met and allow people to be people, it's off the table. Doesn't come up. You would think that would be the most natural thing in the world. Doesn't come up. Doesn't come up. How can we allow people to be people? Whatever that pursuit is. Whatever it is. How do we allow it? That's not what we do. We work people to death, 60 some hours, work them till they're 60, 65, 70 years old, work them all throughout the course of their life. From the time they come into this world to the time they leave, they're beat over the head and people sticking their hands in their pockets, trying to advantage themselves. And that's our society. And we're shocked as shit that we get aberrant behavior, that we have all of these murders that take place, and we have all this domestic abuse, crime, corruption, wars. We're shocked at this stuff. Look at the things that we do. Look at the ways we organize ourselves. This stuff is not necessarily just free will. There's an element of you that's you, but let's be honest, that element of you is always being pushed based on incentives in the environment that you're existing. whether it's politics, whether it's finance, whether that's whatever. Let's talk metaphysics one day. Yes. Yes. I love talking about metaphysics. Yeah, I love talking about metaphysics. Any specific topic, Stephanie? What is keeping my life form from being good? You're not having GME on your show, Jamal, to talk how Cenk and Anna discriminated against pagans and Christians, basically anyone not an atheist. You know, it's funny. Atheists believe that they're not having religious beliefs. I find that to be amazing to me. Like, atheists and Christians are almost the same thing. Both of them have this idea that they're almost, in their mind, flat fact. God exists or God doesn't exist. That there's angels and all this other stuff, angels and demons and devils and all this stuff that create this entire mythos. And atheists just take the lazy route of saying nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing exists beyond this. How do you know? Because I know. But you understand that's a religious belief. How do you know? Like, if your standard for Christians is prove it, the standard to atheists is prove it. You have the same standard. The only honest choice is I don't know. Yeah, you have some atheists who are fucking insane on this point. They would pretend as if they're not having religious beliefs and all this other stuff. Atheism is a religious belief. I'm sorry, it is. I'm sorry, it is. We can have this conversation about secularism, meaning when we're talking about governmental affairs and everything else, yes, it should be secular. There should be a box around it. Religious belief doesn't apply. We're talking about us. The reason we're doing things in this kind of leftist way is because we understand that the less poverty, the less difficulty people have in their lives, the less aberrant behavior those people express. When those people have their needs met, I would make the case those people are less likely to commit crimes and violence and everything else. And part of those needs is an affirmation of self. That doesn't necessarily mean just giving people cash or anything else. That means that person has something that they themselves can give to the world that they feel accomplished by. It goes beyond just having their basic subsistence met. There's more to that than being a person. Pretending, though, as if your belief in atheism is somehow not a religion, and making that argument as if it's not a religion is this amazing argument to me. It's like, prove it. What do you mean prove it? Prove it. Prove it's not a religion. I mean, prove your belief system. Like get across to me. How do you know that? How do you know that as a flat fact? How do you know that? The only honest answer is I don't know. I'm a little not scientific myself. I like magical thinking, but the agnostic is more scientific than atheist. Agreed. Agreed. The thing of saying I don't know is better. Remote viewing can be learned online. It's pretty objective. If it's BS, it works. It works. So just do it. So, hey you, hi. So, remote viewing. I have a list of remote viewing things that I was working on, I think last year in 2016. There's a lot of guys who are fucking amazing at that. You talking about Pat Price, Indigo Swine. Indigo Swine by himself is amazing. It's amazing. John was Monig. He's working at the Robert Monroe Center right now, doing remote viewing, out of body travel, that type of stuff. You'd be surprised at how amazing that is. And that shoots this thing of atheism in the foot right off the bat. Like, if you believe in this kind of materialist view of the world, none of that stuff should take place. It shouldn't be possible. The United States military was funding remote viewing for like 30, 40, 50 years. It only came to the light of day because the CIA didn't necessarily want to have anything to do with it. So they threw it out into the public consciousness. And the public, being robots, was like, what the fuck? Well, the United States was doing it because they were concerned that the Soviet Union was using, this kind of parapsychology stuff. They wanted to know if there was any legitimacy to it. So they funded the research for it. Come to find out there was. These guys would sit in a room, given just numbers. And the numbers were in reference to like a file somewhere. They don't know the file. They don't know what's in the information. And they would give back information associated with it. There's a thing called Target Monkey that's on YouTube that will give you these targets where you can kind of do remote viewing yourself. I started because I was curious to see whether there was legitimacy to it. You know my rule, test it. I fucking test everything. I don't care what it is. The first one that I did, my wife picked something out of a magazine. She wrote numbers down. I went downstairs. I did the meditations. And I started the process. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, I'm writing it down. And I'm like, this can't be right. This can't be right. This can't be right. I see the color yellow. Bright. Like unequivocal. Now, what I'm saying I'm seeing, you're not seeing, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like you're looking at the color yellow. It's like, at least for me, people have different faculties, but for me, it wasn't like seeing the color yellow. It was like being aware of the color yellow. If that makes sense. This is hard to explain but I'm trying to give the explanation. It's not seeing in the sense that you would, like, I'm staring at a particular thing. I'm overtly aware of the color, like gold. Okay, I'm writing it down. I'm overtly aware of it. I don't know why I'm aware of it, but that's in my consciousness and it's in my mind. As I continue on, I'm like, I write down cup. That's what it feels like, a cup. I write down a cup. I write down, this tastes like metal, because I had the taste of metal in my mouth. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, this can't be right. This is fucking insane. This can't be right. It ended up being a trophy. It wasn't a cup. It was a trophy, but the trophy was a cup. And so I was like, okay, this can't be right. And I'm talking myself out of the details and the information that I myself wrote down. So it wasn't like I knew what I wrote down. And I'm looking at my wife like, all right, this is what you picked out, right? Yes. Okay, this is what my information was. And for maybe 6 months, 8 months, I did it every day. I wanted to get good at it, and I wanted to see how good you can get at it. There were times where you felt like you were bilocated, like where you were doing a viewing, you were in a room, and yet you felt like you were in a different space and that you were moving around in a different space, even though you were also still aware that you were still sitting in that room. It got bizarre. There were other times where one of the targets in Target Monkey where I feel like I'm outside and I feel like I'm standing under something. And mind you, my view is limited, but I feel like, okay, I'm outside, I'm standing under something. And I'm writing this stuff down. And I'm like, okay, I'm under something. I don't know what the something is. I'm just under something. And come to find out, the thing that I was targeting, that's exactly what it was. It was, like, for me, it was, okay, it's metal, etc., etc. I couldn't necessarily see what it was. I didn't necessarily know what it was. All I knew, I felt like I was in a different spot. I knew I was under a particular thing. I knew I was in a particular space. Remote viewing is weird, man. It's interesting. That was another case. One of my best cases was, I was doing one of the viewings, and in my meditations and everything else, and I started to feel morbid. Like, I started writing stuff down, like war, explosion. This feels like some kind of military conflict. The thought went through my head of, and I would never get to tell my kids I love them. That clear thought went through my head. I wrote that down. I felt miserable as I did the viewing itself. Like, emotion. I just felt miserable. I felt horrible. I felt morbid. It ended up being Chernobyl. So your mind is contextual in some cases. Some people may be better than this than others, but my mind tends to be somewhat contextual. So for me, I would probably have a hard time, if I didn't know any better, making a distinction between a Chernobyl bomb blast versus a military blast, meaning a military strike. So to me, that looked like a bomb. It looked like a military conflict. It wasn't a military conflict. It was Chernobyl. It was a nuclear explosion. But all of the things that were written down and everything else, the number of people who lost their lives, I started to think, is it possible that that miserable feeling was essentially the lives of the people who were affected in that blast? Again, remote viewing is interesting. Investigate. Stephanie, they were doing a lot of weird research trying to find people who could do remote viewing or help them to get enemies with extra sensory anything. Best if you can feel you have abilities, keep it to yourself, or do it like parlor tricks and not claim you can do it consistently, or one day you might bag over your head. Yeah. You might get a bag over your head. That's funny. I don't think atheism is the lazy way out. I'm being over the top, Darius. I'm being over the top. I'd assume that they think that humans are the gods per se, that we should use religion as a crutch when we build so much of this world out of their hands. But there's too much research that contradicts the atheism thing. Whether you want to go into like past life research, whether you want to go into this thing of near-death research, hell, if you want to even talk to the guy at, he used to be at UVA, used to be one of the presidents of psychology at UVA, who's doing research into past lives with kids who remember their past lives. All of this stuff speaks to the larger and more complicated reality that we're interacting in. That's all. That's what I'm saying the lazy way. I'm being over the top, being bullish when I say it. The CIA was doing all kinds of crazy stuff, furthering Nazis' work in unlimited funding. They were funding, right, Operation Paperclip. So when the Nazis started to bring some of the people over, I'm sorry, when the United States government started bringing some of the Nazis over, they wanted their research. They wanted their weaponry. You must understand, the Nazis were far ahead of everybody else in technology. They had like fighter jets and all sorts of stuff. Hitler just didn't fund the research. The United States, when they got the opportunity, started clandestinely bringing scientists over and people over who were part of the Nazi thing. They started bringing them into NASA and some of these other things that funded the research. It was called Operation Paperclip. Rebel Cage Rally. Scroll up, Jamal. Okay. He's going to miss my sheeple about atheism. All right, let's see. Let's see. Rebel Cage Rally had a comment. Let's see that. Jamal, scroll up, please. We just don't know one exists. Been a devout atheist for decades, and that's how any of my atheist friends believe. Plus, we're not anti-atheist thumpers like weirdos claiming to be atheists do. What? We just don't know one exists. Been a devout atheist for decades, and that's how any of my atheist friends believe. Plus, we're not anti-atheist thumpers like weirdos claiming to be atheists do. I don't understand what that means. Okay, the typos got me on that one. I'm sorry, Rebel. We don't believe anything like a God exists unless there's scientific facts to prove it. We would gladly believe God exists if we see scientific proof. We are not against believing in God. But I'm making the case that not believing in God is also a problem. Don't you need scientific proof to not believe in God? Like, I guess I'm getting to this thing of it cuts both ways. That's all. That's all. You're making the position of I need scientific evidence to say there's a God. Okay, what about the person who say you need scientific evidence to disprove there's a God? Both of those claims are for the most part true. Like both of those arguments are mirror images of one another. I'm agnostic on this point. I don't take a position. Like, so I have my own beliefs, but I make a sharp demarcation point between what I believe versus, you know, how you interact in the world when you're dealing with other people. For all intents and purposes, any interaction that I have in politics is going to be purely secular because I think that's the only thing you can go by. If we're having a conversation about this kind of esoteric concepts and everything else, then yeah, I would share my own beliefs on that stuff. But the atheist thing, I think is, yeah. I mean, look, to each his own. And from my standpoint, this kind of, I don't know how you persist in a society unless you have this kind of, this is secular space, particularly if you're talking about politics and everything else. So yeah, that's fine. I just don't like atheists who are antagonistic towards everybody else because those people aren't atheists. I think that's a fucking insane position. Rob Lenois, what is remote viewing? So remote viewing, back during, I think, 50s, 60s, something like that, the United States was concerned about activities of the Soviet Union. Those activities being parapsychology. The Soviet Union was investigating all sorts of weird science, weird, odd stuff. Things of reality and everything else. Even though they didn't necessarily know how this stuff worked, they was like, okay, is there anything to this kind of psychic functioning? The United States looked at this and said, okay, this seems fucking insane, but at the very least, we need to know the capabilities of what they're trying to do. They didn't just take it as a foregone conclusion that the Soviet Union was batshit crazy. They said, okay, we need to validate one way or the other whether or not there's any legitimacy. They found a psychic, Ingo Swann, and they tried to create scientific protocols by which using psi functioning. And what they mean is they tried to come up with these, yeah, well, that's just what I said, scientific protocols. How do you go about a way of trying to structure that process so this person is not just freeballing it, you know, and trying to come up with information? How do you come up with a different approach to do this that's structured and, you know, that we can validate it based upon real world phenomena? So they came up with these standards in this protocol of psychic function. Now, Ingo Swann was fucking amazing. The man was amazing. They would sit in a room and they would give him coordinates. And they would say, look, here are coordinates. Now, later on, somebody said, well, wait a minute. That person may know all of the coordinates around the globe. And so if you give him coordinates, he may know where those coordinates are. So the numbers became random. It didn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Didn't matter. But what did matter was those numbers were on an envelope associated with a particular thing. An image or something that you wanted to know, person, place, thing, whatever. And ultimately, the person sits in a room And the only thing he has at his disposal are those numbers. And he goes through this scientific protocol, step by step by step, of tuning into the target, retrieving information for the target. Now, Ingo was probably one of the most natural and gifted psychics that I think I've read about, that I've come across. He was amazing. Ingo was the one who told us that Jupiter had rings. Before Ingo said it, nobody knew it. They thought he was nuts. When we finally got a satellite out there, just so happened, they had rings. Ingo said that there were bases on the moon that we didn't necessarily know where they came from. Well, nobody's going to answer that one. That one kind of hangs out there. Ingo had certain governmental agents to interact with him, these kind of clandestine agents interacting with him to try to get information that they thought he himself could supply. And so there was this cloak and dagger stuff going on between Ingo and these other special forces. This stuff gets amazing when you get into remote viewing and UFOs. That's where shit hits the fan. Like, you have this system. Okay, that's a demarcation point. But I'm trying to answer what it is. Ultimately, it's using psychic functioning to pull information from somewhere and have that information drop into your consciousness in a way that you're writing that information down. Now, the reason why they use scientific protocols is because your conscious mind gets in the way. It forever gets in the way. You're trying to get these subtle impressions. Now, this goes into the nature of reality. Like, what is reality? What is reality? What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean for this idea of spirit? Is there this thing of spirit? What does it mean to be a human being in this physical matter reality frame? And is there more to this reality frame? That's the first point. These subtle impressions seem to flood us, but we tend not to pay attention because we're so fixed in our things. Like, your senses are loud. You have 5 senses. Those senses tend to be extraordinarily loud: sight, sound, touch, and all this other stuff. But when you put those things in a corner and you say, okay, go away for the moment, and you try to depress those senses to the degree that you can depress those senses, other stuff starts to happen. You start to get an interesting phenomena. So there have been experiments at Paralabs, Princeton laboratory, or Stanford Research Laboratory, that's another one, where they would do these psi experiments. So they would put somebody in a room, they would try to transmit thoughts and images to somebody else who's in a room, you know. They were able to do it. They were finding that people's responses and everything else, it's like your body responded in a way before you actually got that thought in your head. There's all sorts of odd and interesting things that they found when they were doing this research into psychic functioning. But in this very specific case, the remote viewing thing was pulling information into this kind of your body, in this case, experiencing and pulling that information and using protocols in order to put your conscious mind to the side while that information floods into your subconscious, and eventually drops to your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is loud. It can be a pain in the ass when it's trying to do that process. Your conscious mind, you're getting information, and then information plummets. So say, for instance, like the Chernobyl thing. Something drops into my conscious mind. A war zone. I write it down. Now, your conscious mind says, oh, if he thinks it's a war zone, then maybe this and this and this. Well, your conscious mind doesn't know. Your conscious mind isn't the thing that's pulling the information. It doesn't have any of that accessible. So if your conscious mind is trying to chime in and add stuff, you fucked your process. It's done. You're screwed up. But your conscious mind consistently tries to add in information and you know, data based upon what's being dropped into it. It doesn't know where the information came from, but it's perfectly okay with adding its own opinion about the information. The scientific protocols are there to try to ignore that and push that to the side while you're just flooding the information in. Ultimately, you have somebody that compares the information with what they know. So this is just an information gathering tool. It's like any other thing. They try to compare it with the information that they know to see whether this information correlates with the target. They try to glean information on the target. Now, the military was using it to try to get information on foreign assets, foreign targets, hostages. That was another big one. The Iranian hostage crisis. Joe McGonigal, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, gave this detailed presentation of what was going on with the hostage crisis, explaining how many people there were, how many hostages, whether people injured, all this stuff. Fucking amazing detail. That's remote viewing. That's remote viewing. It's fascinating. I'll say look it up if you're interested. Some of the history on it. It does work. Now the question becomes, how good do you need to be at it for it to work? That's one of the big points. And you always need a target. Meaning you always need to have access to the target because you need to be able to validate your results. Say for instance you say, I'm going to look at what takes place in, you know, some other planet. How do you know what takes place in that other planet unless you have some kind of something where you can compare your notes to? Otherwise, it's just making shit up. The remote viewing is fascinating. It's fascinating. Some of those guys are immensely good at it, immensely talented. We should do a show on that by itself, to be honest, because that would be fucking amazing. The Young Turks genocide deniers, yeah, he was a Armenian genocide denier. If his military approved, it must have a good record. They started shuffling around. So it started in one, then it went to another. It's funny, these guys were like hippies. Like the people they were using for it were so hippies, because mind you, this was mind stuff. This was this kind of consciousness research that they were getting into. They were trying to find if there were limits to the process. So they were putting Ingo Swann in like tomes and whatnot. They were trying to put them in these what are these kinds, like Faraday cages and all this other stuff, and putting them underground and put them out. Like, what are the limits of this? Didn't stop him from hitting his target at all. There were no limits. Now, there were no man-made limits. Let me put it that way. When they started doing ET targets, oh, there were limits. There were limits. There were limits. In situations where the person know they're being monitored, that becomes an interesting scenario. And oftentimes when they were doing UFO targets, they knew they were being monitored. It freaked them out. Yeah, if you're looking online, there's Luca Clemente. I was under the impression that remote viewing was quackery. I would say look it up. I would say look it up. It's fascinating. Do it yourself. I was able to do it. I wasn't able to be great at it, but I only did it for 6 months. I would say look it up. Don't assume that anything is quackery per se. People have perspectives. Somebody may say, I'm an atheist, or I don't believe in UFOs, and they're on a flight. There's this awesome joke where I think this happened actually. There's a flight, and people on the flight see a UFO, and people are like, holy shit, there's a UFO. And the flight lands, and one of the people was a psychologist. So I said, hey, did you see the UFO? He says, no, I didn't look. I don't believe in UFOs. What are you going to believe? You know, it's like, I don't believe in this, so no, I'm not going to look. I had a friend of mine who was like, Scott, we were working together. And Scott was like, we're talking about ghosts and stuff. He was like, I don't believe in that stuff. Shit isn't real, etc., etc. And then inevitably he's like, there was this one time. I was like, what is it? Which one is it? You don't believe in it? There was this one time. And he's like, there was this one time where we went to his friend's house. I got there first. I went into the house first. I see a woman walk up the stairs. There shouldn't be anybody in the house, so I walk up the stairs behind her. I go into the room. There's nobody there. You saw a ghost, Scott. I don't believe in ghosts. What was it? I don't know. Were you mentally ill? No. Do you typically see people that don't exist? No. You saw a ghost, Scott. I don't believe in ghosts. Stephanie Chateau. 3-way live stream sometime next week. Philosopher Jamal, pagan me, and friendly atheist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher. If Trump starts a war, we should all sleep in a Faraday cage. Yeah, that's terrifying. Yeah, that would be terrifying. Can we agree that all gods of any written word man-made doesn't exist? Yes, I agree. If so, that only leaves deism. So if a being exists, I have to ask, who created that being? Why do people just always assume that there's this, that it has to be a quote unquote God? Why? I mean, is it possible to have a higher order of something else, some external thing? Like you'd have physicists who would make this case that, you know, it has to be external or the other. Or even if you go into this idea of digital physics, that all of this stuff is this kind of projection of something else from some other reality frame. That means that there's another reality frame that's projecting this particular reality. I don't understand why people are so hell-bent on it. I think people need to have this idea of what things are. And you're dropped into an area where you have no idea what it is. You live your entire life. And then you die. The question becomes, how do you know that anybody exists outside of yourself? That's the first question. How do you know that you're not just some avatar, or your character, some avatar in the game system itself that has certain limitations on it, be it from a conscious and a physical standpoint, that interacts with a bunch of other just machinery, software? How do you know? How do you know that anything exists outside of yourself? How do you prove that? And if you can't prove that, then you've arrived at a problem. You are taking this idea of atheism or deism, all this stuff, for granted. You're just saying, okay, I need to believe in something, so this is what I think takes place. All of it is up for grabs. That's my point. There's certain things in physical matter reality that you go with that physicists say, yes, this is physical matter reality. And I agree with physicists when we're having this conversation about physical matter reality. But they take it as a religious belief that only physics exists. I don't take that as a religious belief at all. I am open to this idea of I don't know. I am inclined to believe that there is something after this. I am inclined to believe that this is some kind of projection of something else. Can I prove it? No. Can you go into conscious states in a subjective way to try and investigate it? Yes, there is out-of-body experiences. There are lucid dream states. There are all those things. Hell, even like vision trips, like if you're talking about what's the stuff like Peruvian vision quests, those type of things. There are things that try to dig into this idea of what reality is, assuming for the moment that reality is just X. This is physical matter reality, and everything is physical, and etc. That's religious belief. That's all. I think that's religious belief. All right. I am going to end this because this once again went to like 2 hours, and my intention was like 20 minutes. Not to mention it's almost 1:30. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always support through Patreon, or in this case, since I'll probably be using this live stream a lot, or Super Chat. Thanks, guys. Well, it's funny, we always stray from the topic. I think a video on remote viewing will be fucking awesome. There's Courtney, I can't think of his last name. Don't take anything for granted, man. I don't care what it, like, they call people tinfoil hat wearers and everything else, and I always fall into this thing of how do I know unless I investigate it? I'm even taking somebody's word for it, or I have to investigate it to learn it for myself. The remote viewing thing, yeah, there's credibility to it because there have been people doing it for God knows how long. And as bad as I am at it, I was hitting left and right. Like, so what I mean when I say I'm hitting the target, you get numbers. The numbers don't mean anything, just random numbers. 5, 8, 9, 2, 6, 8, 7. Okay, you write those numbers down. And as you write those numbers down, you start to kind of tune into what it is. And I'm using, this sounds kind of woo-woo, but I don't know another terminology for it. For me, meditation helps if you do it first. Meaning, like, if you meditate first, you kind of get into this kind of Zen state, and you kind of, for me, almost zoning out to some degree. Now, you're writing the numbers down, and for me, I'm writing with the ink pen. It's like your hand is moving, so you're not necessarily focused on, you're not trying to force it. And that's the hardest part, not trying to force it. And eventually, you start getting impressions. It's just kind of settles in. For me, I could feel when I'm hitting the target. Like, there are times where I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm way off. There are other times where I'm like, this has to be the target. I know what this is. I know what this is. I know what this is. Now, in those cases when I'm saying I know what this is, it's not that I know exactly what the target is. I'm feeling that I'm connected to it. The information I'm getting, I'm connected. I'm there. So if I'm like, I'm walking through a neighborhood, there's water to my left, there's this and that, I feel like I'm connected to that target. There are other times where I'm way fucking off in the boonies somewhere. But keep in mind, you have all things in creation that could be part of that target. If you get, let's say, 10 elements out of, 20, like 10 major elements. So if you get major elements in the target itself, meaning the thing that you drew is a representation of what your target was. You could have had all things in creation that could have been in that target. If you have the capacity to have all things in creation to be in that target, why are you even close to it? What is the percentage? What's the probability of you getting anywhere near some random thing that somebody came up with? It's like, I drew a picture. All right, here are the numbers for the picture that represents. What is the picture going to be? Who the fuck knows? It could be anything. The fact that you're nailing it and hitting the target is amazing. That was the part that used to always blow me away. And I used to talk myself out of it. Like, this can't be right. This can't be right. This can't be right. I'm looking at the data. I have my data points. I'm looking at what the target is. I'm looking at what I drew. I'm looking at what I wrote down. I'm like, this can't be right. But it was. I've dated going back for like 6 months. So that would be an interesting show. Maybe a history of remote viewing. And yeah, maybe a history of remote viewing. Because they've been having like experiments with stuff, like time experiments and all. Seeing how like future timelines They've been doing experiments with alternative timelines. So like, for instance, somebody may see Courtney Brown a while back when he has a remote viewing team called Farsight. And in that remote viewing team, they said there was going to be an asteroid hitting California, something to that effect. And that there was going to be massive devastation, massive damage, all this other stuff. Now, California did get hit by an asteroid, but there was barely any damage. And so he's like, well, wait a minute. Clearly there was an asteroid, so clearly the people saw it. Why was it off? Like, what was the distinction between those things? And is it possible that what he was saying was this kind of, like, anything that you're looking for from a future standpoint is somewhat hazy? It's not necessarily written yet, because it's not necessarily written yet. You have these probabilistic timelines. It's like, what are the probabilities, or what is the probabilistic outcome based upon the probabilities of things that people may do? That type of stuff. It's a fascinating thing when they start digging into the research of this stuff. I would say look up Stanford Research Institute. I would say look up Paralabs, some of the experiments in Paralabs. Ingo Swann. Definitely look up Ingo Swann. That's if you're curious about it, Luca. That's if you're curious. It's fucking fascinating. I predict Jamal will go to bed at 12:43 my time, and it's 12:31 now. It's 1:32 here. I think you're going to be wrong on that, because I'm going to play chess for 30 minutes after I leave here. You need to sleep, remember. Oh yeah, Dax, if I wasn't here, I'd still be awake. I don't sleep well at nights. I've had persistent insomnia going back since I was like 16. So give it up, Dax. You know the man doesn't sleep. Luca Clemente. No, I'm leaving after this. I'm about to head out. All right, guys. This was a great convo. I enjoyed this conversation. I don't mean to take shots at Justice Democrats willy-nilly. I don't like the feeling of them being embarrassed in this way, them being emasculated in this way. You know, that type of thing. We're gonna do whatever we want to do to you, and you're just gonna take it. You're gonna take it, and you're gonna vote for us. And not just you're gonna vote for us afterwards. You're gonna tell your audience to vote for us. Doesn't matter what we do to you with the goddamn Democratic Party. Doesn't matter your protests. None of that stuff matters. At the end of the day, you're still gonna vote for us. I don't like that. I hate that. I hate that position. I fundamentally hate that position. That position just seems wrong in principle. Being willing to say no is a monstrous choice. And it's a fucking amazing choice. It's a beautiful, breathtaking choice. Being obstinate. Not belligerent, just being obstinate. Just saying no. Just saying no. I suspect it's going to get you further than just blindly being complicit. So, I will leave it at that. Guys, thank you for staying with me. I really am going to head out this time. Don't tell me I have a life after life, or we may have to stop talking to each other. What? Don't tell me I have... Don't tell me I have to live life after death, or we may have to stop talking to each other. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you I don't know. I'm ambiguous. Like, the beauty of ambiguity is that it's just honest. I don't know. I don't take a position because I don't know. I have my own beliefs. I have my own ideas. But those things are based purely upon my own subjective experiences. I've experienced too much weirdness to go on the side of atheism. That's all. Whether that's a life after life, who knows? Whether that's life in the context of our current life, who knows? I can tell you this. I remember I've had experiences where in a lucid state, I ended up in a previous life, which was strange. I was still me. I still knew I was me. I'm looking at myself through this person's eyes. I understand that something is about to take place that I'm not going to like. It's going to take place. And I pull myself up. I said, I don't want to experience this. Now, it wasn't conscious. That wasn't this conscious knowledge of what was going to take place. It was this kind of... Look, when you're in out-of-body states, out-of-body and lucid states, your feelings are things. And what I mean by that is, it's like a felt sense. It's like how you feel is almost like a sense. And that sounds bizarre, but it seems to be true. I had this immense feeling that I'm not going to like what's about to take place. And considering that that person who I identified as myself got shot in the face, yes, I didn't necessarily like what's about to take place. Strange, yes. Bizarre, yes. It's perfectly conscious and aware, yes. I was looking at the scene from a third-person perspective, and I asked the question, why am I seeing this? Now, I wanted to talk to my guide at this point, because I'm like, why am I seeing this? Now, I gotta be honest. I take any opportunity I can to talk to my guide, and I suspect she knows that, in which case, you know, that doesn't always happen. But that being said, my question was, why am I seeing this? I just fucking shot in the face. Why am I seeing this? It's one thing if there was a point or purpose. Like, is this just some kind of random, you know, lucid state that you just kind of fell into some other place? I don't know. This stuff is... Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, Rebel. I don't know. I'm not even gonna say so. Did you see how the CIA had research on Uri Geller? I did see that. I heard about that. Save the goddamn breasts. They feed the hungry people. Agreed. Save the tits. As far as UFOs, they could exist. I do believe life exists outside of Earth. It's impossible that it doesn't. I don't think we will ever see it. The distance is too far. That's a religious belief. Like, this is what I mean when I say religious beliefs. You're the caveman telling another caveman that there may be people on the other side of the globe, but you would never have the capacity to talk to those people because it's too far to walk. Could the caveman in any way comprehend a cell phone? Could he? Could he comprehend Wi-Fi? Could he comprehend any of those things? Your science is only like 100 years old. You're infants. We're infants. I'm in treatment, so that is in the past. Remote view. I don't understand. Blink 182 says they exist. Yeah, in the documents. Look, and for that matter, look into the Hillary docs. Like the Podesta leaks. The Podesta leaks have some mind-blowing revelations about the UFO stuff. That's a conversation that they themselves are having. Hillary Clinton wanted to be asked that question because she wanted to open those files. So, I think that evidence will point to, particularly if you're talking about Roswell. Let's say Roswell, for example. Stanton Friedman is establishment physicist. Nuts and bolts. Solid. If you're looking for anything talking about a definitive thing on Roswell, that would be the guy. If you're looking for this kind of, I'm looking for just an establishment figure's perspective on Roswell, that's your guy. And he will come down to the side of, this took place. This took place. Don't assume technology. Stephanie, Jamal, before you go, what do you think of tarot cards? There are human beings. Let's go remote viewing for the moment. Let's go back to that. And to make a slight detour just to explain. Remote viewing is picking up on some kind of subtle energy thing, whatever that is. I don't think they know the principle on why it works. Sometimes they make this case of, well, you know, all of the universe exists in everything, and so people have, well, it's like consciousness expands throughout the universe and all this type of stuff. But they don't know. They just know that for some reason they're able to pull information from the ether, in this case. You can make an argument that tarot cards is this kind of psi functioning, but using a different tool for that psi functioning. That's assuming you say tarot cards work. Now, if you're saying that those things are effective, then yeah, I would say it's probably some kind of psi functioning. But the same thing with astrology. Like, all of these things line up in this odd and interesting way of interpretation. And when you get into interpretation, you know, that becomes dicey. I've had tarot readings that were fucking amazing. I've had tarot readings that were fucking horrible. It's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. As for astrology, my chart is in point, but it's not a science. Like, it's one of those things where I can describe my behavior through my chart. But again, it becomes this thing of, why does any of this stuff seem to have any legitimacy to it? The tarot thing is, Yeah, that's a crapshoot. I still think that stuff to some degree is based on this psi functioning in a sense. And the question becomes whether or not you believe the human has the capacity for psi functioning. If the answer is yes, meaning if you do believe that, then all of these things are just tools for that psi functioning. If you believe that there is no such thing as psi functioning, that human beings are just robots and etc., then yeah, to you, none of this stuff would exist. Anything that you see in those things would just be anomalies and confirmation bias. I do believe in psi functioning. So, like I said, I've had people, but the problem is interpretation. Like, it's not like remote viewing, you either hit the target or you don't. And tarot readings, yeah, I've had some that was amazing. I've had some that were horrible. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it on that one. Stephanie, not big on astrology. Here's the thing. I'm not against any of that stuff. I guess I'm not against the four. I guess I'm nothing it. The astrology thing, I like the way it describes these elements of personality. Like, so I like this thing of this kind of, like, somebody else who knows anything about astrology, I can say, well, I'm an Aries moon and I have a Virgo sun and a Virgo ascendant. They would know what that means in a heartbeat. They would totally get what that is. I would say, well, I'm a Venus and Leo. They would totally know what that means. Now, whether or not those things are true for everybody, I don't know. I could say my chart is accurate. I could say my chart is ridiculously accurate. Why that chart is accurate, I have no idea. I have no idea. People usually look at sun sign astrology as being, you know, it's like, oh, this person's a Virgo, whatever else. It's not sun sign, man. Your sun sign can be kept, can be crippled by other stuff in your chart, meaning that person doesn't necessarily act like what they call XYZ is supposed to act like. I find it interesting because I like to pore over data. And so for me, poring over the data itself of the chart and digging into aspects and digging into how one aspects interact with another aspect. And then you dig into how one chart interacts with another chart. To me, that's data. I love data. So for me, I tend to lean more towards that side because I like the data. But again, with astrology, you get into this thing of interpretation, which becomes somewhat difficult. But just to make a quick point, none of those things are science. Now, I would say that I like this idea of science investigating all sorts of stuff. So I like this idea of science investigating OBEs and all this other stuff. But I don't like it if it's going to do it from the perspective of this stuff doesn't exist, and so we're investigating it purely just to prove it doesn't exist. That's not really a scientific perspective. That's, again, a religious belief driving behavior of an experiment. I like investigating that stuff because I like to understand the phenomenology, and I want to see it for myself. It's not enough for me to take somebody's word for it. This guy, this yogi, Sadhguru, and I'll leave it at this. I know I keep saying I'll leave it at this. Sadhguru, somebody asked him, what happens after death? He's a yogi. He's like, what happens after death? He always gets this question. Anywhere he goes, he always gets this question. And he sits there. He looks slightly flustered by the question. And he says, I could give you that answer. I can give you the answer. But either you take my word for it or you don't. And in both situations, you're in the exact same place where you started before you even asked the question. Ultimately, you are going to end up in this position of belief, and that gets you no closer to the truth. I like to function at that spot. That's where I like to function. Either it's an aspect of belief and it gets me no closer to the truth, in which case I'm just existing in ambiguity, and I accept the fact that it's ambiguous. It's not easy, man. People don't like to do that. But that's where I usually fall on. Luca Clemente, my chart is not accurate. You tell him, Luca, you're messing up my prediction. Yes, I've destroyed that prediction. When mine was done to the time, place, it was right on. Yeah, because it has to be time and date. Like it's August 31st, 6:05 a.m., Richmond, Virginia. It has to be all those elements, and then you start getting those things. If something is off, your house placement could be off, or something else could be off in the chart. I was fascinated by that. For the longest time, I was like, oh, that stuff is bunk, that stuff is ridiculous, that stuff is bullshit, etc., etc. And I met this guy who, he's what you would consider to be a psychic, I guess. His predictive capabilities of the future, his ability to tell you the events that are going on in your current life is startling. Like unnerving. to a degree. Meaning, like he used to do tarot cards, and he realized, I don't really need the tarot. Like he's like, at some point he's like, I don't need the tarot cards. The tarot cards aren't really doing anything. I'm just telling this person what's coming to me. He was good. Him and I got into this big fight. Him and I got into this big argument because I thought he was being a prick, and I thought he was presuming too much about his own abilities, and we got into an argument. Let's put it that way. So we don't talk anymore. But his ability to kind of be predictive of what's going on in the moment was amazing. He freaked my mom out on occasion. My mom has a friend of hers. My mom doesn't necessarily like talking to that friend because that friend always talks about my mom's brother. She was infatuated with my mom's brother for like 20, 30 years. She was infatuated with my mom's brother. And so every time her and my mom get together, they just talk about her brother. So my mom gets sick of it. Now, this friend was going to this person. Let's call the person Don. And Don didn't know my mom. Don didn't know any of us. Like, didn't know us from anybody. Didn't know anybody. And Don, out of the blue, tells her one day, you have a friend of yours. That friend of yours doesn't like to talk to you because you keep bringing up her brother. Now, this is fucking amazing in general because A, he doesn't know anybody. B, I don't even think she was talking about my mom at that point, and he just kind of pulls us out the blue. He then tells her, tell her to contact me. I would like to talk to her. So he doesn't know this person. He's stepping into the next person based upon the person he's talking to now. My mom and this person gets into a car. They're driving somewhere one day, and she turns to her and she says, hey, you don't like talking to me because of my brother? My mom's like, what? No, that's not it at all. Why are you thinking that? Why are you saying that? Now, my mom was quite dead to rights. That is exactly what was true. But she didn't necessarily want to go that route. At that point, she was like, hey, I have a friend of mine. He said that, you didn't like talking to me because he kept bringing up my brother and all this other stuff, but he wants to talk to you, etc. And that's kind of how we started to meet. What's his name? He had a friend of his that was like an expert in doing charts and stuff. And as he's looking over my chart, he's over the phone. He's telling me all of this stuff about myself, like personal stuff. Like he's digging into these aspects of my personality. And I was like, okay, if I'm being fair and honest, I need to at the very least look at my chart and at the very least research my own chart and to see, is there any legitimacy to what they're saying? My chart was dead on. My chart was dead on. Not just dead on, like dead on in stuff that I grew into, if that makes sense. Like as you got older and you had certain things that start to express itself more. Yeah. That's kind of where I ended up with that one. Tabitha Enriquez, check out Lilydale in New York. I've heard about that one. A bunch of hippies. Yeah. A town based on hippies. Trillions of dollars are going into stage 3. So if he stays up 2 more hours Dax's time, I'll still be right. No, I'm turning it now. All right, I'm going to end this here. It's almost 2 in the morning. I enjoy these conversations, guys. That's why I usually have them. My wife was in bed at like 9 o'clock, and I dozed off when I first got back home. So I did get several hours of sleep before even doing this. I don't hear her upstairs, so I'm assuming she's upstairs asleep. So I'm going upstairs and I'm going to bug her when I'm getting in bed. Usually what takes place is I get in bed, I cut on TV. So whether I'm here or somewhere else, or I'm playing chess. Of Urvic astrology accounts for the precession of Earth, Jamal will be a Taurus and a... Yeah. Don't get me wrong, you can attack astrology. That's not the word of God at all. It's not a science at all. You can add the other argument of, well, wait a minute, what about the other celestial bodies? Why are you ignoring those celestial bodies? Those don't have an impact. If you're saying asteroids have impacts, or you're saying those other things don't, yeah, you can attack astrology. I always just make the case that my chart is right. I don't give a shit about other people's chart. That's me being selfish. Hey, honey, I was doing my philosophy stuff. What philosophy stuff? Oh, I need to go there. Oh, Lilydale. Yeah, Lilydale has like a bunch of psychics and stuff. There was this one really interesting scene where a grieving mom goes to Lilydale, and they're telling her this stuff about her dead kid, and she flips. She flips the fuck out. Do you ever win at chess? Every video I see, you're always losing. What videos do you see? What videos do you see? Darius Adams. Darius, yes, I do win at chess. So, when I was playing a lot, when I was in my heyday, when I was in my typical strength or my natural strength, I pushed my rating up to 2032 in the United States Chess Federation. From a blitz chess standpoint, if we were saying like the Internet Chess Federation, that was like 2300. Now, I stopped playing chess. I stopped playing for a long time, for years on end. Stopped playing tournaments and everything else. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start back playing. Now, the impetus for this was losing, believe it or not. It's like losing for me is a motivation. Up to this point, my power was unchallenged. It's like my authority and skill and mastery of the game was unchallenged. There was nobody around me that could pose a threat to my game. So my name was only spoken in whispers, in fear that I would show up and beat the shit out of whoever spoke my name. That's what I was. That's what I left. And then after years on end, people questioned whether or not that still held true. They weren't necessarily scared of speaking my name in whispers, because for the most part, you know, the strength level wasn't there like it was. So it's this, you know, aging power of sorts that was there before. I was caught and roughed up by people who, for the most part, understood what I was and wanted to take advantage of the situation that I wasn't necessarily at my natural strength. Fair enough. That's chess. That's competition. But I hold grudges. And in the same way that I just showed immense dominance and skill when I beat the shit and broke the backs of one person after the next, to the point where they said, okay, we relent. You are fucking amazing. And we're going to understand that you're fucking amazing. Even to this day, even though my skill is less or lower, I still have people who say, okay, I know your skill is not up to snuff now, but I understand. They understand. They were beating enough and embarrassed enough. Now, my wife laughs at me when I say this, because I told her, I was like, they caught me in a dark alley and they roughed me up. And just like Batman crawling out of the alley, crawling out of the cave, running back and lifting weights and getting himself back up to snuff. Yes, I'm getting myself back up to snuff. And I will embarrass and hurt and break the back of one person after the next that talked bad about me and said bad things to me as they beat me in my moment of weakness. It's one-armed man. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Quick, somebody mentioned Star Trek. Jamal is a sucker for interesting conversation. Yeah, I am. Stephanie, I wonder if his wife ever comes and just bashes his computer with a baseball bat so he pays attention to her. So when I first started doing videos, let me put it this way. I'm bad at doing two things at once. Very bad at it. So when I focus on one thing, I have a hard time divvying up my attention to things. Now, chess, in many respects, is often called the other woman when dealing with guys who are relationships or anything else. YouTube, or the videos themselves, kind of became that way, where there was an overemphasis on doing the videos themselves, in which case she was like, yeah, you're spending too much time doing videos, you're not spending enough time with me. Now, that eventually balanced itself out as I started to kind of find my level of balance in regards to relationship and videos and stuff like that. So, no need to bash the computer. At this point, we've balanced on this. Yeah, we balanced on this. It took a while because, you know, the YouTube thing was a new irritant, if you want to call it that. It was something that I absolutely enjoyed doing. I fucking love doing it. And you see these chats, they're just natural chats, just having conversations with people. It's like you're in a room with a bunch of people. Initially, she hated it because it's two things. She understood that for me, this is a level of expression which I find to be immensely natural and immensely enjoyable. Like getting my perspective out and making my case, and even if that means, you know, going after somebody or back and forth, like discussion-wise, I enjoy it. I feel natural. It feels free as can be. It's the most natural thing in the world that I think I've ever encountered. Now, but that's a problem because you also have a wife. And that wife is saying, oh my God, he's found this thing where he loves it, what he's doing. He fucking enjoys himself when he does it. And this normal expression that he would have that's purely directed at me, which she doesn't want to hear, by the way. That's the first point. Like, she's not into the stuff in the way that I'm into it. Like, she doesn't dig into the way in people's brains in the way I dig into it. She doesn't look at the stuff the way I do. So the fact that it's used here to some degree is a benefit to her because it's not necessarily used on her. That's the first point. But the second point, we eventually reach this thing of, okay, I'm going to do more to be in bed at night. That's the first point. I'm going to do more to limit the amount of time that we do on this. We spend more time playing chess now than we used to before. Well, like, we find things we ourselves do together as a couple to keep our relationship straight. We even do this thing for coupons. Now, the coupon thing is interesting and is... Yeah, the coupon thing is interesting, slightly dirty, but I would recommend it to anybody who's in a relationship who likes the spice of their relationship. So for my birthday, my 40th birthday, she gave me a coupon book. That coupon book had all sorts of stuff like a 20-minute back massage. Like, so it's like this coupon gives the user, can compel a back massage at any particular point that he wants. This can, a free cooked meal whenever this person wants. A 30-minute of whatever the person wants. A day of whatever the person wants. Like, it was these type of things in the coupon books. 15 minutes of whatever the person wants. And so you can imagine that this is fucking amazing. So it's like 2 in the morning. Oh, babe, I'm hungry. I need to use this coupon. I need you to go fix me something to eat. That's being a dick. That's being a dick. The thing is, both people know that those coupons can go both ways. Meaning, if she gets her hand on a coupon, anything that you've done in the course of you having that coupon is going to be used against you. Now, all of this, mind you, is in good fun. So what I'm saying, being a dick, all of this is in good fun. I would never do anything if she didn't necessarily like to do it because it wouldn't be enjoyable. But, yeah. We're good. We're good. We're good. Q versus Kurt. Q would beat anybody. Q would beat anybody. Like, that's not a contest. Q can wipe them out of existence. Like, you understand it. Like, there's no contest. The only reason that Picard stood a chance is because Q never just destroyed Picard. He thought it was a game. He thought it was fun. It was just comedic time for Q. He was just looking for things to occupy himself. Stefan Chetu. Oh, those sorts of coupons. Well, the coupons run the gambit to whatever the person wants. I would DM Julian Assange with coupons. He'll probably block me. Yeah, he'll block you. Yeah, because you can imagine that if you're in a marriage and if you're a guy and your wife says, okay, I'm giving you a 15-minute coupon to do whatever you want. That coupon runs the gambit of everything being vulgar to just hilarious. Like you could say, yeah, I don't care what you're doing right now. I want to play chess for 30 minutes. That's within your power to do. Or the other one. I love this one. This thing of, you understand that I have a coupon for an hour of whatever I want, right? Yes. All right. I want you to do X, and I'm not using my coupon for it. Under the threat that if you don't do X, I will use my coupon and I would make it hurt. Like that type of stuff. Now, this is politics. This is one of those things where I joke about TYT with the Justice Democrats thing. My wife, the first time around, she was like, okay, whatever, what do you want me to do? The second time around, she was like, fuck that, you're going to use that coupon. You're not going to, threaten me in this way. You're not going to threaten me. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. That type of thing. Fucking love it. Those coupons are awesome. That's Trader Terror, Jamal. What if he sees the live stream? That's who? I don't know who that is. Is that show for Rebel or typo Rob Dave? I can't believe you actually read that aloud. Why not? Why not? You wrote it. Rebel Cage Rattler actually one day, she was like, is this, we were having a vulgar conversation. The conversation was fucking awesome. And she was like, this is not going to be live, is it? Like, nobody else is going to know this existed, is it? I love it. Oh, Traitors, yeah. Jamal is still going. So are we, Q. Reading the comments aloud about Julian. Why not? You wrote it. Jamal, I'm now working with Suffolk County, New York Democrats. Don't know if I'm paying dues yet. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Independent outsider. That wasn't an allowed comment. Any comment that goes into the box is an allowed comment. You're a human being. Whatever you want to say to one, you can say to thousands. There's not going to be thousands of people seeing the video, but you know what I mean. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that comment? There's nothing wrong with that comment. Where's the comment? Where's the comment? Where's the comment? That you wanted to give a coupon to Julian Assange? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Mind you, those coupons could be, I did not throw you under the bus. I did not throw you under the bus. Keep in mind, those coupons, Stephanie, you're slightly telling on yourself. So those coupons, and I'm saying that in a comical way, those coupons don't necessarily have to mean sexual behavior. Those coupons could be anything. What are you giving a coupon to Julian Assange for? And why would that quote be a bad thing if the coupon could be used for pretty much anything? Just saying. Just saying. Just saying. The last time you went to, you got dusted. The old videos where you would stream your games were funny because you would talk crap and then lose. Alright, how about this? I'm going to show some new videos for the chess thing. My rating is up to 1800, going from 16, so I've gained 200 rating points over the course of my practice, my training over the past month. So I would add those to the videos. I would add 2 new videos. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't want to leave the impression I'm getting my ass handed to me. I will DM Julian Assange with some coupons and then he'll block me. Yeah, this is why I think that's funny. Let's say those coupons were to bake cookies. Let's say those coupons were to bake cookies, Stephanie. Is that anything to not read aloud? Stephanie is going to give Julian Assange coupons to bake cookies. Why would Julian Assange block you for coupons to bake cookies? Nothing to be ashamed of. Here's what it is. I love it. Look, Stephanie and Julian sitting in a tree. Hot damn, that's right. Rebel Cage Rail. I would much rather give Snowden coupons. Have you seen that pic of him in his bed? Whew. Stephanie, Jamal, I hate you so much right now. Why? Why? There's nothing wrong with it. I'll still give away it still gives away crush, even if it's just cookies. Yeah, but I think cookies is a little different. We can call it cookies, alright. Dax Jacobson, what kind of weirdo shows up at the embassy in the UK and says, I have a coupon for 30-minute chess game? I hate you all. Oh, Stephanie, I hate you all. Stephanie, Snowden has a girlfriend, you perv. Oh, that's awesome. Rubber Cage Rattler. Well, if Steph wants Assange to eat cookies off of her, well, she never said eat cookies off of her. She just said she wanted to give him a coupon. Now, she took issue with the fact that I raised the idea of a coupon. I'm saying this jokingly, by the way, because I think she understood what those coupons meant. As a human being, yes, there are going to be times where the person cooks a meal or whatever else. But there are other human drives. And there are other human needs. And I suspect that people get a little self-conscious when they're talking about those particular human needs. Give the man a coupon. Do your thing, man. Do your thing. Okay, let's talk about Star Trek. Fair enough. Independent outsider. John, I was impressed with the Suffolk County Greens leader, but I hear about the Greens. Let's see. My ears are bright red. Please, God, let no one else see this live stream with us. Steph, you're a person. You're a person. People have drives. People have things that they're attracted to. And look, the coupons thing, I brought that up because I think it's an awesome idea for relationships, or even just couples. I think it's a fucking awesome way of those people trying to get themselves out of the box, providing they're doing it in this kind of light-hearted, for the best way. It can't be a situation where one person is trying to get over and take advantage. It could be comedic. It could be funny. You can come up with all sorts of weird, interesting things. It's just people, man. It's not to be ashamed of anything else. It's funny. Rebel Cage Rattler. LOL. Yes, I am a perv. I want a man to wear wolf's mask and take me down. You know what's funny? I was talking to my wife. I was like, is Worf? Do women get a thing for Worf? She was like, what do you mean Worf? I said, you know, Worf on Star Trek. You know, he was the brute, the Cleon. You know, because in every scenario where we've seen Worf hook up with somebody, he's roughed them up. Like, he's breaking bones and whatnot. She was like, yeah, I don't want my bones broken. But by the same token, you know, women do have this thing sometimes being taken. So that's fine. Raw, I don't know what that means. I feel like we know you so well now, Stephanie. Wait, that was a Chewbacca. Sorry. All right, I'm gonna end this. Yes, after 2 in the morning. So, all right, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. This was ran for like 2.5 hours, so we're just running our mouth. The original premise of the story is there. I think it was like the first 10 minutes. Everything else is just us talking. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always support through Patreon. And I didn't mean to make your ears bright red stiff. That's all. I think it's funny. I think it's cute. So, all right, guys. You all have a good night. Bye-bye.